Some nights you run until your lungs scream for mercy, and still it's not enough. Maya Chin crashes through rain-slicked alleys, blood pounding in her ears, Marcus Hale's footsteps echoing like a death sentence behind her. She's done being his punching bag, his possession, his victim. But when she stumbles into a wedding that isn't what it seems, chandeliers glittering over dangerous men in expensive suits, she realizes she's just traded one predator for another. Vincent Torino's eyes find hers across a sea of silk and lies, and his voice cuts through the chaos. She's mine now. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to know where you're watching from. Now, let's dive in. Pasek. The rain came down like punishment. Maya's shoes were gone, lost somewhere 3 blocks back when she'd vaulted a chain-link fence and felt the heel snap clean off. Now she ran barefoot through puddles that reflected neon signs and broken streetlights, her dress clinging to her ribs, her breath tearing out in ragged gasps that tasted like copper and fear. Behind her, Marcus was calling her name, not shouting. That would have been easier somehow. He called it soft, patient, like he had all the time in the world, like he knew she'd tire eventually, like he always knew. Maya, baby, come on. You're making this harder than it needs to be. She didn't look back. Looking back was how you died. Her feet slapped against wet pavement, and every stride sent jolts of pain up through her ankles. The alley narrowed ahead, dumpsters on one side, a brick wall tagged with graffiti on the other. She could smell rotting food and piss and rain, and she pushed harder, lungs burning, because stopping meant going back, and going back meant, no, not again, never again. She'd promised herself that 3 hours ago when she'd locked herself in the bathroom of his apartment, staring at the bruises blooming purple along her collarbone, listening to him pace outside the door, promising he was sorry, promising it wouldn't happen again, promising, all the words he'd used 100 times before, smooth as silk and just as empty. This time she'd climbed out the window. The alley opened onto a broader street, and Maya nearly sobbed with relief when she saw people, actual people, not just shadows and threats. A cluster of them stood beneath an awning outside what looked like a hotel or a banquet hall, smoking cigarettes, their laughter drifting through the rain. She angled toward them, hoping the crowd would swallow her, hide her, give her just enough time to think. But when she glanced over her shoulder, Marcus was there. He stood at the mouth of the alley, rain sliding off his leather jacket, his expression unreadable in the dim light. He didn't run. Didn't need to. He just started walking, hands in his pockets, like they were out for an evening stroll. Maya's heart kicked against her ribs. She bolted toward the entrance, a set of glass doors framed in gold, spilling warm light onto the wet sidewalk. A doorman in a crisp uniform stepped forward, his hand raised, but Maya didn't slow. She hit the doors hard, shoving through before he could stop her, and stumbled into a world that didn't make sense. Crystal chandeliers, marble floors, silk everywhere, draped over tables, wrapped around columns, flowing from the shoulders of women who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. The air smelled like expensive perfume and fresh flowers, and a string quartet played something elegant and haunting in the corner. A wedding. She'd crashed a wedding. Maya stood there, dripping rainwater onto pristine white marble, chest heaving, and every head in the room turned toward her. The music didn't stop, but it might as well have. Conversations died mid-sentence. A woman in a gown the color of champagne froze with a glass halfway to her lips. A man in a tuxedo narrowed his eyes, his hand drifting toward the inside of his jacket. Maya's stomach dropped. This wasn't just a wedding. The guests weren't smiling. They were watching, assessing, calculating. The men stood too still, too aware, like soldiers pretending to be civilians. The women wore diamonds that could fund a small country, and their eyes were cold, sharp, unimpressed. At the far end of the hall, beneath an arch woven with white roses, stood the groom, Vincent Torino. She didn't know his name yet, wouldn't learn it for another few minutes, but she knew what he was the moment she saw him. Tall, lean, dark suit tailored so perfectly it looked like a second skin. Black hair slicked back, jawline sharp enough to cut glass, and eyes that didn't blink when they found hers. He was handsome in the way a knife was handsome, beautiful, precise, and absolutely deadly. The room held its breath, and then the doors burst open behind her. Marcus. He strode in like he owned the place, rain dripping from his jacket, his smile wide and easy and full of teeth. Sorry to interrupt, he said, his voice carrying across the hall. Just here to collect what's mine. Maya's legs locked. She wanted to run, but there was nowhere left to go. The guests formed a wall of silk and suspicion between her and any exit, and Marcus was already closing the distance, his boots echoing on the marble. Maya, he said again, softer now, like they were alone, like he hadn't spent the last 2 years breaking her down piece by piece. Come on, baby, let's go home. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out, and then Vincent Torino moved. He stepped down from the altar, slow, deliberate, every movement controlled, and the room seemed to tilt in his direction. Conversations that had started to murmur died again. Even Marcus hesitated, his smile faltering just a fraction. Vincent crossed the floor in silence, his gaze locked on Maya, and when he stopped in front of her, she realized he was taller than Marcus, broader in the shoulders, colder in the eyes. He didn't look at Marcus. Not yet. Are you hurt? His voice was low, calm, almost gentle, but there was steel underneath. Maya blinked. What? Are you hurt? She shook her head even though her feet were bleeding and her wrist ached where Marcus had grabbed her earlier and her ribs felt like they'd been kicked in. Vincent's jaw tightened. Then, finally, he turned to Marcus. Who are you? Marcus's smile came back, sharp and confident. Her boyfriend. And you are? Uninterested in your answer. Vincent's tone didn't change, still calm, still measured, but something in it made the air go thin. Leave. Marcus laughed, actually laughed. Listen, man, I appreciate the chivalry, but this is between me and her. So why don't you go back to your... She's mine now. The words landed like a gunshot. Maya's breath caught. Marcus's smile vanished, and the guests, the ones who'd been pretending not to listen, went utterly still. Vincent turned back to Maya, his expression unreadable. Do you want to leave with him? She should have said yes, should have nodded, apologized for the disruption, let Marcus drag her back out into the rain, because at least she knew what that looked like. At least she understood the shape of that nightmare. But when she opened her mouth, what came out was, no. Vincent nodded once. Then he looked at Marcus. You heard her. You've got to be kidding me. Marcus's voice went hard, dangerous. You think you can just... I don't think. I know. Vincent stepped between them, and though he didn't raise his voice, didn't lift a hand, the threat was unmistakable. If I see you near her again, I'll break every bone in your body. Slowly. Do we understand each other? For the first time since Maya had met him, Marcus Hale looked uncertain. He glanced at the guests, really looked at them, and whatever he saw there made him go pale. The men in tuxedos weren't just watching anymore. They were waiting. Hands near jacket pockets, eyes flat and patient. Marcus swallowed. This isn't over. Yes, Vincent said quietly. It is. Marcus held his gaze for another few seconds, then turned and walked out. Fast. The doors swung shut behind him, and the rain swallowed him whole. Maya's knees buckled. Vincent caught her before she hit the ground, his grip firm but not rough, and guided her to a chair someone had pulled over. She sat, shaking, her vision swimming, and tried to process what had just happened. A woman in a silver gown appeared with a glass of water. Maya took it with trembling hands, sipped, tasted nothing. Are you all right? Vincent crouched in front of her, his dark eyes scanning her face like he was cataloging every bruise, every tear in her dress, every shallow breath. I don't know. Her voice came out small, broken. I don't know what just happened. You're safe. He said it like a fact, like the world had already rearranged itself around that single truth. Who are you? His mouth twitched, not quite a smile. Someone who doesn't like uninvited guests. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It's not. Before she could push further, an older man in an impeccable suit approached, his silver hair slicked back, his expression carved from stone. Vincent. A word. Vincent rose smoothly. Not now, uncle. Now. They stared at each other for a long moment, some silent battle of wills playing out, and then Vincent inclined his head. 5 minutes. He glanced back at Maya. Don't move. She almost laughed. Where the hell was she supposed to go? He disappeared into a side room with the older man and two others who looked like they'd been carved from the same block of granite. The door closed. The string quartet started playing again, tentative at first, then with more confidence. Maya sat there, dripping on expensive upholstery, and tried to breathe. A woman in her 50s, elegant, cold, draped in emeralds, leaned over. "You picked an interesting time to make an entrance, dear. I didn't mean to—" "Of course you didn't." The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. "But you're here now, and Vincent claimed you in front of everyone. Do you understand what that means?" Maya shook her head. The woman studied her like she was a puzzle missing too many pieces. "It means you're not going anywhere. Not tonight, possibly not ever." She straightened, smoothing her gown. "Welcome to the family." Then she walked away, leaving Maya alone with a glass of water and the slow, creeping realization that she'd just traded one cage for another. The 5 minutes stretched into 10, then 15. The wedding, or whatever this was, resumed around her. Guests drifted back to their conversations, though more than a few kept glancing her way. The bride, a striking woman with sharp cheekbones and ice-blue eyes, stood near the altar, whispering urgently to an older woman who might have been her mother. Neither of them looked happy. Maya considered bolting. The front doors were right there. She could run again, disappear into the rain, find a bus station or a shelter, or... Running won't help. She jumped. A man had appeared beside her chair, younger than Vincent, maybe mid-20s, with a scar running through his left eyebrow and a smile that was all edges. He's already decided, and when Vincent decides something, he shrugged. "Well, you'll see." "Decided what?" "That you're worth keeping." Her stomach twisted. "I'm not a thing to be kept." "No," the man agreed, "but you're something, and that's more dangerous." Before she could respond, the side door opened and Vincent emerged, his uncle and the others trailing behind him. He looked different, harder. The calm mask was still in place, but there was something brittle underneath, like glass under pressure. He crossed to her, ignoring the bride's glare, ignoring the murmurs rippling through the crowd. "We're leaving." Maya stood on instinct, her legs unsteady. "Where?" "Somewhere safe." "That's not an answer either." This time he did smile, barely. "You'll get used to that." He offered his arm. She stared at it, then at him, trying to read the angles of his face, the intent behind those dark, unreadable eyes. "I can walk on my own." "Your feet are bleeding." She looked down. He was right. Crimson footprints trailed behind her on the white marble, small and damning. "I don't know you," she said quietly. "No," Vincent agreed, "but you know him, and I'm not him." It wasn't a promise. It wasn't even reassurance. It was just a statement of fact, delivered in that same calm, steady voice. And somehow that was worse because it didn't ask her to trust him. It just asked her to choose. Him or the rain, him or Marcus, him or nothing. Maya took his arm. The guests parted as they walked toward the exit, a corridor of silk and suspicion, and she felt their eyes on her like knives. Vincent didn't acknowledge any of them. He moved with the same controlled precision he'd shown from the start, like the whole world was a chessboard and he'd already calculated every move. Outside, the rain had softened to a drizzle. A black car waited at the curb, sleek, expensive, windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. A driver in a gray suit held the door open, his expression blank. Vincent gestured for her to get in. Maya hesitated. "If I do this, you already did. What does that mean?" He leaned closer, and for the first time she saw something flicker in his eyes. Not warmth exactly, but not coldness either. "It means you made a choice, and now I'm honoring it." "By kidnapping me?" "By protecting you." "Same thing." "No," Vincent said quietly. "It's not." The driver cleared his throat. Vincent stepped back, giving her space, and that, more than anything, was what decided it. He could have forced her into the car, could have had his men grab her, drag her, lock her in, but he didn't. He just waited. Maya climbed into the car. The leather seats were soft, warm, and the interior smelled faintly of cedar and rain. Vincent slid in beside her, the door closing with a solid thunk that sounded like finality. The driver pulled away from the curb, and the wedding, the chandeliers, the guests, the shattered illusion of safety, disappeared behind them. "Where are we going?" Maya asked again. "My home." "And if I want to leave?" Vincent glanced at her, his expression unreadable. Then you leave. Just like that. Just like that. She wanted to believe him. She wanted it so badly it hurt. But belief was a luxury she couldn't afford anymore. The city slid past the windows. Blurred lights, empty streets, the skeletal frames of construction sites rising like gravestones. They drove for 20 minutes in silence, and with every block, Maya felt the adrenaline draining out of her, replaced by a bone-deep exhaustion that made her eyelids heavy. Finally, the car turned into an underground garage, sleek and pristine, and came to a stop in front of a private elevator. Vincent opened the door, stepped out, waited. Maya followed. The elevator was all glass and steel, and when Vincent pressed the button for the top floor, it shot upward so fast her stomach dropped. She watched the city shrink below them, the lights spreading out like a map of lost chances and bad decisions. When the doors opened, she stepped into a penthouse that looked like it had been ripped from a magazine. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the skyline, minimalist furniture in shades of black and gray, art on the walls that probably cost more than she'd make in a lifetime, and silence. So much silence it felt like a weight. "The guest room is down the hall," Vincent said, shrugging out of his jacket. "Second door on the left. Bathroom attached. There's clothes in the closet, my sister's. You're about the same size." Maya turned to face him. "Your sister? She doesn't live here anymore." "Why not?" His jaw tightened. "Because she got smart and left." The words hung between them, sharp and strange. And Maya realized she was standing in the middle of a stranger's home, barefoot and bleeding, with no phone, no money, no way out except the elevator she'd just come up in. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. Vincent met her gaze. "Because someone should have done it for her." "Your sister?" "Yes." "And what do you want from me?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he crossed to the windows, hands in his pockets, and stared out at the city like it was a problem to be solved. "Nothing," he said finally. "Right now, I want nothing from you. Right now. Right now." Maya's pulse kicked. "And later?" Vincent turned, and the look in his eyes was something she couldn't name. Not hunger, not possession, something colder, more patient. "Later," he said quietly. "We'll see." She should have run then. Should have demanded he take her back, find a shelter, call the police, anything. But her feet wouldn't move. Her body had hit some kind of limit, and all she could do was stand there, swaying slightly, trying to remember how to breathe. "Go to bed, Maya," Vincent said, his voice softer now, almost kind. "We'll talk in the morning." "How do you know my name?" A faint smile ghosted across his mouth. "Your boyfriend shouted it 14 times in my wedding hall. Hard to miss." Ex-boyfriend, she wanted to say, but the word stuck in her throat because, was he? Could you break up with someone who'd never see you as separate from himself? She turned and walked down the hall, each step sending fresh spikes of pain through her feet. The guest room was as pristine as the rest of the penthouse. White sheets, soft lighting, a view that stretched for miles. The closet held rows of clothes, expensive and clean, and she pulled out the first thing she touched, a sweater that smelled faintly of lavender. The bathroom had a shower with 6 different settings, and she stood under the hottest water she could stand, watching the grime and blood swirl down the drain. Her body was a map of bruises, some fresh, some old, all reminders of the life she'd just escaped. Or had she? She didn't know anymore. When she finally climbed into bed, the sheets were so soft it felt wrong, like she didn't deserve them. Like at any moment, someone would tear them away and drag her back to the place where nothing was ever soft, where every surface was a potential weapon. She closed her eyes and tried not to think about the fact that Vincent Torino, a man she didn't know, couldn't trust, shouldn't believe, had just become the only thing standing between her and Marcus, or that he'd looked at her like she was a piece on a board he was already learning to play. She woke to sunlight and the smell of coffee. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it came back in fragments. The rain, the wedding, Vincent's voice cutting through the chaos. She's mine now. Maya sat up slowly, her body aching in new and inventive ways. The clothes from last night were gone. Someone had taken them while she slept, and a fresh set had been laid out on the chair. Black jeans, a white blouse, underwear still in the packaging. Her skin crawled. She dressed quickly, fingers clumsy on the buttons, and stepped out into the hall. The penthouse looked different in daylight. Less sterile, more lived in. There were books on the shelves now that she noticed them, a jacket tossed over the back of a chair, a half-empty glass of water on the coffee table. Vincent sat at the kitchen island, reading something on a tablet, a cup of coffee in his hand. He'd changed too, dark slacks, a gray sweater that made him look almost human. He glanced up when she entered. "You're awake." "Where are my clothes?" "Being cleaned." He gestured to a stool across from him. "Sit. You should eat." "I'm not hungry." "Yes, you are." He said it so matter-of-factly that she almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she crossed her arms and stayed where she was, near the hallway, near an exit that wasn't really an exit. "I want to leave," she said. Vincent set down his tablet. "All right." She blinked. "What?" "You want to leave. So leave." He nodded toward the elevator. "Door's unlocked. You can go wherever you want." It was a test. Had to be. Just like that. Just like that. He picked up his coffee, sipped, watched her over the rim. "But if you walk out that door, I can't protect you, and he will find you." Marcus. The name sat between them like a landmine. "You don't know that," Maya said, but her voice wavered. "Yes, I do." Vincent set down his cup. "Men like him don't let go. They circle. They wait. They find the moment you think you're safe, and they take it away." He paused. "How long do you think it'll take him to track you down? A day? 2? That's not... He knows your habits, your friends, the places you go when you think no one's watching." Vincent's voice stayed calm, clinical, like he was discussing the weather. "He's already planning it. Right now, while you're standing here, he's making calls, asking questions, pulling strings." Maya's stomach turned. "How do you know?" "Because it's what I would do." The honesty of it hit her like a slap. No pretense, no false comfort, just the cold, brutal truth delivered in that same even tone. "So what?" Maya said, her voice shaking now. "I stay here? Become your... what? Your prisoner?" "My guest." "For how long?" "As long as it takes." That's not an answer. Vincent stood, rounding the island with that same controlled grace, and stopped a few feet away. Close enough that she could see the faint scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes weren't quite black, just a brown so dark it swallowed light. "Here's the truth," he said quietly. "You walked into my world last night. Not by choice, I know that. But you're in it now. And the people who were at that wedding, they saw me claim you. They saw me challenge someone on your behalf. In their eyes, you're mine. Which means if you leave, you're not just running from Marcus. You're running from every person who thinks hurting you might hurt me." Her breath caught. "You're saying I'm a target. I'm saying you already were. Now you're just a different kind." The words should have terrified her. And they did. But underneath the terror was something else. Something sharp and bitter and almost like relief. Because at least he wasn't lying. At least he wasn't pretending this was anything other than what it was. "What do you want from me?" she asked again. Vincent's expression didn't change. "Right now, I want you to sit down and eat breakfast. After that, we'll figure out the rest." "That's it?" "That's it!" She wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, break something, demand answers that made sense. But she was so tired. So goddamn tired of running, of fighting, of trying to survive one more day in a world that kept finding new ways to corner her. So she sat. Vincent returned to his side of the island, slid a plate toward her. Eggs, toast, fruit that looked too perfect to be real. She picked up a fork, poked at the eggs, didn't eat. "You're safe here," he said after a moment. "You keep saying that. Because it's true. And if I don't believe you?" He met her gaze. "Then don't. Belief isn't required." They sat in silence, the city stretching out beyond the windows, and Maya realized with a sick, sinking certainty that she'd just made a choice she couldn't unmake. She'd stepped into Vincent Torino's world, and there was no stepping back out. The first 3 days passed in a kind of suspended animation. Maya moved through the penthouse like a ghost, careful not to touch too much, not to claim too much space, not to believe for even a second that this was anything other than temporary. She slept fitfully, waking at every small sound, the hum of the elevator, the whisper of the air conditioning, footsteps in the hall that turned out to be Vincent moving through his own home like he owned the silence itself. Which, she supposed, he did. He kept his distance. Mornings, he was gone before she woke, off to whatever business required a man like him to wear expensive suits and disappear into black cars with tinted windows. He'd return in the evenings, sometimes early, sometimes not until after midnight, and they'd exchange maybe a dozen words. Polite. Careful. Like strangers sharing an elevator. She told herself it was better this way, safer. On the fourth morning, she found him in the kitchen again, this time on the phone. He was speaking in Italian, low, clipped, angry, and whatever was being said on the other end made his jaw tighten until she thought it might crack. When he noticed her, he switched to English mid-sentence. I'll handle it. No, don't. Just stay where you are. He hung up without saying goodbye and set the phone down with the kind of control that suggested he wanted to throw it through the window. Problem? Maya asked before she could stop herself. Vincent's gaze flicked to her, assessing. Nothing that concerns you. Right. She crossed to the coffee maker, poured herself a cup. The silence stretched thin and brittle. You've been here 4 days, Vincent said finally. I know. You haven't asked to leave. Maya turned, leaning against the counter, the coffee warm in her hands. Would it matter if I did? Yes. Liar. His mouth twitched, almost a smile, but not quite. You don't trust me. Should I? No, Vincent said simply. But you're still here. She wanted to argue, to snap back with something sharp and cutting, but he wasn't wrong. She could have left, could have walked out any of the dozen times he'd been gone, taken the elevator down, disappeared into the city. But she hadn't, because the truth was uglier than fear of Vincent. The truth was she had nowhere else to go. Marcus called, she said quietly. Vincent went very still. When? Last night, 3 times. Didn't answer. No. She swallowed. But he left messages. What did he say? Maya set down her coffee cup before her hands could start shaking. That I'm making a mistake. That you're dangerous. That I should come home before... She trailed off. Before what? Before you ruin me. The words hung in the air like smoke. Vincent didn't react. Didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Didn't offer reassurances or denials. He just stood there, watching her with those dark, unreadable eyes, and somehow that was worse than anything Marcus had said. Are you? She asked. Dangerous? Yes. No hesitation, no softening. And are you going to ruin me? This time Vincent did move. He crossed the kitchen slowly, deliberately, until he was close enough that she could smell cedar and rain and something darker underneath. He didn't touch her. Didn't need to. I don't know yet, he said quietly. Her breath caught. But Marcus will definitely kill you if you go back. So between the two of us, he tilted his head slightly. I'd say I'm the safer bet. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. He stepped back, breaking whatever spell had tightened the air between them, and picked up his phone again. I have a meeting in an hour. Don't leave the building. Why not? Because I asked you not to. That's not a reason. Vincent paused at the threshold, glanced back. It's the only one I'm giving you right now. Then he was gone, and Maya was alone with her coffee and the creeping certainty that she'd just crossed some invisible line she hadn't even known existed. She spent the morning exploring the penthouse, really exploring it this time, not just drifting through rooms like a guest afraid of breaking something. The place was massive, cold, beautiful in the way a museum was beautiful. Everything had its place. Nothing was out of order, except for one room. The door at the end of the hall had been closed every other time she'd passed it. This time, it was open just a crack, and through the gap she could see bookshelves, a desk, papers scattered across the surface like someone had left in a hurry. She shouldn't go in. She went in. The office was warmer than the rest of the penthouse. Darker wood, heavier furniture, the kind of space that felt lived in despite the layer of dust on the windowsill. The bookshelves were packed with everything from classic literature to dense legal texts, and the desk held a laptop, a half-empty glass of whiskey, and a stack of files bound with rubber bands. Maya's fingers itched. Don't. She picked up the top file. Inside were photographs. Dozens of them. Surveillance shots, mostly. Grainy, black and white. The kind taken from across the street or through a telephoto lens. They showed men in suits, meetings in restaurants, handshakes that looked too formal to be friendly. She recognized a few faces from the wedding, the older man who'd called Vincent nephew, the woman in emeralds who'd warned her about being claimed. And then, at the bottom of the stack, she found one that made her stomach drop. Marcus. He was standing outside a warehouse, hands in his pockets, talking to two men she didn't recognize. The photo was dated 3 weeks ago, before she'd run, before she'd crashed the wedding, before Vincent. Her hands started shaking. Find something interesting? She spun around so fast the file went flying, photographs scattering across the floor like evidence of a crime. Vincent stood in the doorway, jacket gone, sleeves rolled up, and his expression was impossible to read. I didn't mean to, Maya started, but the words died when she saw his face. He wasn't angry, he was waiting. Why do you have pictures of Marcus? She demanded, her voice louder than she intended. Vincent stepped into the room, crouched, and started gathering the photographs with methodical precision. Because I make it my business to know who walks into my world uninvited. He didn't walk in, I did, and he followed. Vincent stacked the photos neatly, slipped them back into the file. 3 weeks ago, Marcus Hale started sniffing around my family's territory, asking questions, making noise. I wanted to know why. Maya's pulse kicked. You've been watching him? Yes. For 3 weeks? Yes. Before I even met you? Vincent stood, holding the file, and met her gaze. Before you crashed my wedding? Yes. The room tilted. You knew who he was. When he came in after me, you already knew. I knew what he was. Vincent set the file back on the desk. A small-time hustler with delusions of importance. The kind of man who thinks violence makes him powerful. And you still, her breath hitched, you still claimed me in front of everyone, knowing he'd come after me, knowing it would make me a target. You were already a target. Because of you. Because of him. Vincent's voice didn't rise, but the steel in it cut clean through her anger. He made you a target the first time he put his hands on you, the first time he made you afraid to leave. I just gave you a way out. You gave me a cage. No, Vincent said quietly. I gave you a choice, and you made it. Maya wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, hurt him, make him feel even a fraction of the fear and confusion clawing through her chest. But her hands were shaking too hard, her vision blurring, and all she could do was stand there, drowning in the realization that nothing about the last 4 days had been coincidence. He'd known. He'd always known. Why? She whispered. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then, instead of answering, he reached past her and pulled another file from the desk drawer. This one was thinner, newer. He opened it and turned it so she could see. Inside was a single photograph. A woman, early 20s. Dark hair, dark eyes, a smile that looked like it had been hard won. She was standing in front of a coffee shop, laughing at something off camera, and even in the still image, Maya could see the ghost of old bruises on her wrist. Who is she? Maya asked, though some part of her already knew. My sister, Vincent said. Sophia. Where is she now? Safe. Far away. Somewhere he'll never find her. He? Vincent's jaw tightened. The man she ran from, the one who thought he owned her. He closed the file, set it aside. I got her out too late. She'd already lost 2 years to him, 2 years of bruises and apologies and promises that never meant anything. Maya's throat burned. I'm not her. No, Vincent agreed. You're not. But when you walked into that wedding hall, bleeding and terrified, with him on your heels, he paused. I saw her. And I wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. So this is about guilt. This is about making sure one more woman doesn't disappear because no one cared enough to stop it. The honesty of it hit her like a fist. No pretty words, no false heroism, just a man who'd failed someone he loved and was trying to make it right the only way he knew how, even if it meant turning her into a pawn. Does she know? Maya asked. Your sister. Does she know you're doing this? Vincent's expression shuddered. No. Why not? Because she'd tell me to stop, to let you go, to not make her mistakes my war. He met her gaze. And I can't do that. Maya opened her mouth, closed it. The anger was still there, hot and sharp, but underneath it was something more complicated, something that felt dangerously close to understanding. I need air, she said finally. Vincent nodded. There's a balcony through the living room. I meant outside, real air, not... She gestured vaguely at the glass and steel surrounding them. This? No. You said I could leave. I said you could leave if you wanted to go back to your life, not for a walk. What's the difference? The difference, Vincent said, his voice going flat, is that Marcus is still out there. And the second you step outside this building without protection, he'll know. How? Because I would. There it was again. That brutal clinical honesty. No apologies, no softening, just the truth, sharp and cold. Maya crossed her arms, feeling the walls close in. So I'm a prisoner. You're protected. Same thing. Not even close. Then prove it, she snapped. Take me outside. Let me see the city. Let me feel like a human being for 5 goddamn minutes instead of a problem you're trying to solve. Vincent considered her for a long, tense moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. Luca, bring the car around. We're going out. He paused, listening. No, both of us. Yes, now. He hung up and looked at Maya. You have 10 minutes to get ready. She blinked. What? You wanted to go outside. We're going outside. He checked his watch. But if you're not ready in 10 minutes, the offer expires. Maya didn't wait for him to change his mind. She bolted down the hall to the guest room, grabbed the first jacket she could find, and was back in the living room in 8. Vincent stood by the elevator, jacket on, looking every inch the predator he'd always been. But when she approached, he held out his hand. She stared at it. If we're going out, he said quietly, we go together. No running off, no disappearing. You stay where I can see you. Or what? Or I bring you back, and you don't leave again. It wasn't a threat, it was a promise. Maya took his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and the calluses on his palm suggested he wasn't a stranger to violence. They stepped into the elevator together, the doors sliding shut, and as they descended into the garage, she realized this was the first time she'd left the penthouse since that first night. 4 days. 4 days of safety that felt like suffocation. The car was waiting. Same sleek black sedan, same expressionless driver. Vincent opened the door for her, and she slid in, the leather cool against her legs. He followed, and the door closed with that same final thunk. Where are we going? Maya asked as the car pulled out into the late morning light. Somewhere public, Vincent said. Somewhere he won't risk making a scene. You mean somewhere you can show me off? He glanced at her, and for the first time there was something almost like amusement in his eyes. You're learning. Is that what this is? A lesson? Everything is a lesson. The city rolled past, storefronts, cafes, people going about their lives like the world made sense. Maya pressed her forehead against the window, drinking it in. Freedom, even if it was just the illusion of it. They drove for 15 minutes, winding through narrow streets until they reached a restaurant tucked into a corner she didn't recognize. It was upscale, but not ostentatious. White tablecloths, soft lighting, the kind of place where deals were made over wine and whispered conversations. Vincent's place, she realized as they walked in. The host greeted him by name, ushered them to a private table in the back, and disappeared without asking for a menu. You own this, Maya said, settling into her chair. I own a lot of things. That's not an answer. It's the only one you need. A server appeared with water, bread, olive oil. Maya picked at the bread, her appetite gone, and watched Vincent watch the room. His gaze moved constantly, cataloging exits, assessing faces, tracking movements with the precision of someone who'd spent a lifetime expecting threats. Do you ever relax? She asked. No. Not even here? Especially not here. The food came, pasta, fish, things she didn't remember ordering. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, and tried to ignore the way every patron who entered seemed to recognize Vincent. A nod here, a murmured greeting there, the weight of his presence like gravity. Halfway through the meal, her phone buzzed. She'd forgotten she still had it. Vincent hadn't taken it, hadn't asked for it, which should have been reassuring, but instead felt like another test she didn't understand. She glanced at the screen. Marcus. Her hands went cold. Vincent noticed immediately. What is it? Nothing. Maya. She turned the phone so he could see. The message was short, brutal. Enjoy your new cage, baby, but cages have locks, and locks can be picked. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something in the air shifted. He pulled out his own phone, typed something quickly, and set it down. "What are you doing?" Maya asked, making sure he doesn't get close enough to try. "You can't just—" "Yes," Vincent said quietly. "I can." Before she could respond, the restaurant's front door opened and a man walked in. Not Marcus. Someone else. Older, maybe 50s, with silver hair and a scar running from his temple to his jaw. He scanned the room, found Vincent, and smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Vincent stood slowly. "Stay here." "Who's that?" "No one you need to meet." He moved toward the front, and Maya watched as the two men faced each other near the entrance. They didn't shake hands, didn't exchange pleasantries, just stood there, speaking in low voices she couldn't hear, and the tension between them was thick enough to choke on. Then the silver-haired man's gaze slid past Vincent. To her. He said something, short, sharp, and Vincent's entire body went rigid. Maya's stomach dropped. The man smiled again, said something else, and turned to leave. Vincent didn't follow. He just stood there, watching him go. And when he finally came back to the table, his expression was carved from stone. "We're leaving," he said. "What? Why?" "Now, Maya." There was no room for argument in his tone. She stood, grabbed her jacket, and followed him out through the back exit into an alley where the car was already waiting. They climbed in. Vincent gave the driver an address she didn't recognize, and the car peeled out fast enough to make her grab the door handle. "What the hell was that?" she demanded. Vincent didn't answer. He pulled out his phone, made 3 calls in rapid succession, all in Italian, all clipped and vicious, and didn't look at her once. "Vincent." "Not now." "Tell me what's happening." He finally turned, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. That was Antonio Castellano. He runs half the city's underground, and he just made it very clear that you're not under my protection anymore. Maya's pulse stuttered. "What does that mean?" "It means," Vincent said quietly, "that every family who saw me claim you at that wedding now knows I can't keep you safe, which makes you a target, a liability." He paused. "And a weapon they can use against me." The words landed like bullets. "Because of Marcus," she whispered. "Because of me." Vincent's jaw tightened. "I made you visible. I made you matter. And now they're going to use that against both of us." The car swerved through traffic, and Maya felt the walls closing in again, tighter this time, with sharper edges. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safer than the penthouse." "There is nowhere safer than the penthouse." Vincent looked at her, and for the first time since she'd met him, she saw something like regret in his eyes. "There was," he said quietly, "but I just lost it. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind, and pulled into the garage of a building Maya didn't recognize. Smaller than the penthouse. Older. The kind of place that looked abandoned from the outside but hummed with electricity once you stepped inside. Vincent led her through a maze of hallways, concrete floors, exposed pipes, the smell of old metal and fresh paint, and opened a door into a space that was part apartment, part fortress. 3 men were waiting inside. One she recognized from the wedding, the young one with the scar through his eyebrow. The other 2 were strangers, broad-shouldered and silent, guns visible beneath their jackets. "This is Luca," Vincent said, nodding to the scarred man. "He'll be with you whenever I'm not." "With me?" Maya repeated slowly. "You mean guarding me?" "I mean keeping you alive." Luca stepped forward, offered his hand. "Ma'am." She didn't take it. "I'm not some princess in a tower." "No," Luca agreed. "You're the woman everyone suddenly wants dead. So you'll forgive me if I treat you like one." Vincent moved to a desk in the corner, pulled out a laptop, and started typing. The other 2 men positioned themselves by the windows, and Maya stood in the middle of the room, feeling like the walls were made of eyes. "This is insane," she said. "This is survival," Vincent replied without looking up. "I didn't ask for this." "No," he agreed. "You asked to go outside, and I let you, and now we're both paying for it." The accusation stung more than it should have. Maya crossed to the desk, slammed her hand down next to the laptop. "Don't you dare put this on me." Vincent finally looked up, and the exhaustion in his eyes was startling. I'm putting it on me." "Then fix it." "I'm trying." "Try harder." "Maya." "No." She leaned closer, her voice shaking. You pulled me into this world. You claimed me. You made me matter to people I've never even met. So don't sit there and act like there's nothing you can do. Vincent closed the laptop slowly. There's always something I can do. The question is whether you'll survive it. Her breath caught. What does that mean? He stood, and the space between them felt charged, dangerous. It means that the only way to keep you safe now is to make you untouchable. And the only way to make you untouchable, he paused, is to make you mine, publicly, undeniably, in a way no one can question. Maya's heart slammed against her ribs. You're talking about a binding, Vincent said quietly, an engagement, a promise in front of every family in this city that you're under my protection permanently. That's insane. That's the only option left. I won't do it. Then you'll die. The words hung in the air like a noose. Maya stepped back, her legs shaking. You're bluffing. I don't bluff. Then you're threatening me. I'm telling you the truth. Vincent's voice was steady, relentless. Antonio made his move today because he thinks I'm weak. That I claimed you out of sentiment, not strategy. If I don't prove him wrong, if I don't show every family in this city that you're not a liability but an asset, they'll come for you, and they won't stop until you're dead, or worse. Worse than dead, Maya repeated, her voice hollow. Yes. She wanted to laugh, wanted to scream, wanted to wake up and discover this was all some fever dream she'd stumbled into. But Vincent's eyes were too real, too certain. And if I agree, she asked quietly, then you're protected, permanently. As your wife. As my partner. What's the difference? Vincent stepped closer, and this time he did touch her, his hand cupping her jaw, tilting her face up so she couldn't look away. The difference, he said softly, is that a wife is property, a partner is power, and I'm offering you the second. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, and Maya felt something inside her crack open, something raw and desperate and so goddamn tired of running. I don't love you, she whispered. I don't love you either. Then why? Because you're still here, Vincent said. Because you didn't run when you had the chance. Because when I look at you, I don't see a victim anymore. I see someone who survived. And survival, his grip tightened just slightly. Survival is the only thing that matters. Maya's breath came in shallow bursts. Her mind screamed at her to refuse, to fight, to find some way out of this impossible choice. But the truth was simpler and more brutal than any lie she could tell herself. She had nowhere else to go, no one else to trust. And Marcus was still out there, waiting. If I do this, she said slowly, I want the truth. No more games, no more tests. You tell me everything. Vincent's mouth curved, not quite a smile. Deal. And if you lie to me, you'll leave, and I won't stop you. Promise. I promise. Should have felt like a trap. Should have sent every alarm in her body screaming. But standing there with his hand on her face and his eyes locked on hers, Maya realized something terrifying. She believed him, and that was more dangerous than anything Marcus had ever done. Okay, she whispered. Vincent's eyes darkened. Okay? Okay. He leaned in, and for a moment she thought he was going to kiss her, but instead he pressed his forehead against hers, his breath warm against her skin. Then we do this right, he said quietly. Tomorrow night, the Castellano estate, in front of everyone who matters. Tomorrow? Her voice cracked. The longer we wait, the more time they have to move against us. Maya closed her eyes, felt the weight of the decision settling over her like a shroud. 24 hours. In 24 hours, she'd be bound to a man she barely knew, in a world she didn't understand, with no way back to the life she'd had before, if you could even call it a life. What do I have to do? She asked. Vincent pulled back, his hand dropping from her face. Nothing. Just show up. I'll handle the rest. That's not reassuring. It's not meant to be. He turned, started giving orders to Luca and the others, and Maya sank into the nearest chair, her legs finally giving out. Tomorrow night, she'd either become untouchable, or she'd disappear completely. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Marcus's voice whispered, cages have locks, and locks can be picked. Whoops. The hours blurred together after that. Luca brought food she didn't eat. Vincent disappeared and returned multiple times, each visit shorter than the last. his expression growing darker with each phone call he took in the other room. Maya tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Marcus, saw the wedding, saw Vincent's hand reaching for hers, and the choice she'd made without realizing it was one. Around 3 in the morning, she gave up and wandered into the main room. Vincent sat at the desk, papers spread out in front of him, a glass of whiskey untouched at his elbow. He looked up when she entered, and the exhaustion on his face was startling. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Can you?" "No." She crossed to the window, looked out at the city lights bleeding through the darkness. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked quietly. "This life." Vincent was silent for so long she thought he wasn't going to answer. Then finally, "Every day." She turned surprised. "Then why?" "Because it's the only life I know." He leaned back in his chair, studying her. "My father built this empire. My uncle expanded it, and when they died, it fell to me. I didn't choose it, I inherited it. You could walk away." "No," Vincent said quietly. "I couldn't, because the second I did, everyone who depends on me would die. My sister, my people, the families who trust me to keep the peace." He paused. "That's the thing about power, Maya. It's not freedom, it's responsibility. And responsibility doesn't care if you're tired." Maya sat down across from him, pulled her knees to her chest. "Is that what I am to you? A responsibility? You're a choice I made." "That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now." They sat in silence, the weight of tomorrow pressing down like a storm about to break. "What if I can't do this?" Maya whispered. "What if I'm not strong enough?" Vincent's gaze softened, just slightly. "You ran from a man who wanted to break you. You survived 4 years of him. You walked into a room full of predators and didn't flinch." He paused. "You're stronger than you think. Or I'm just good at pretending." "Then keep pretending," Vincent said, "until it becomes real." Maya laughed, a small broken sound. "Is that what you do?" "Every single day." The honesty of it cut through her defenses, and for the first time since this nightmare started, Maya felt like she was seeing him. Not the strategist, not the crime lord, just a man who'd inherited a war he never wanted and was trying to survive it the only way he knew how. "What happens if this doesn't work?" she asked. "If Antonio doesn't believe it?" Vincent's expression went cold. "Then I kill him. Just like that. Just like that. And if more come, I kill them too." He met her gaze. "I will burn this entire city down before I let them touch you." It should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first honest promise anyone had ever made. "Why?" Maya asked. "Why does it matter so much?" Vincent stood, crossed to the window, and looked out at the same light she'd been staring at. "Because I let Sophia go into that life alone. I told myself she could handle it, that she'd ask for help if she needed it." His voice went rough. "By the time I realized she wouldn't, by the time I found her, she was already gone. Not dead. Just empty. And you think you can save me?" "No," Vincent said. "I think you can save yourself. I'm just making sure you have the chance." Maya stood, moved to stand beside him, and for a long moment they just stared out at the city. Two people who'd been broken by different hands but were somehow still standing. "Tomorrow night," she said quietly. "Tomorrow night." "And then what?" Vincent glanced at her, and something in his expression shifted, something that looked almost like hope. "Then we find out if we're strong enough to survive what comes next." Maya took a breath, held it, let it out slowly. And somewhere in the dark spaces between one heartbeat and the next, she made her choice. Not because she trusted him, not because she loved him, but because for the first time in 4 years, someone had looked at her and seen more than a victim. And that fragile, dangerous thing was worth fighting for, even if it killed her. The next evening came too fast. Maya stood in front of a mirror in a room she didn't recognize, wearing a dress she hadn't chosen. Black silk, simple, elegant, the kind of thing that cost more than she'd made in a year. Someone had done her hair, her makeup, transformed her into a version of herself that looked like she belonged in Vincent's world. She barely recognized the woman staring back. Luca appeared in the doorway. "It's time." Her hand started shaking. "Hey." He stepped closer, his voice gentler than she'd heard it. "You don't have to do this." "Yes, I do. There's always a choice." Not for me. Maya turned from the mirror. Not anymore. Luca studied her for a moment, then nodded. Then, let's make sure they never forget it. He led her through hallways that smelled like old money and older secrets, and when they reached the main hall, Maya's breath caught. The Castellano estate was everything Vincent's penthouse wasn't. Opulent, sprawling, dripping with the kind of wealth that came from generations of taking what wasn't theirs. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings painted with scenes she didn't recognize. Marble statues lined the walls, and everywhere were people, the families, all of them, watching. Vincent stood near the center of the room, flanked by men she recognized from the wedding and others she didn't. He looked like he always did, controlled, lethal, untouchable, until his eyes found hers. Then something in his expression shifted. He crossed to her, slow and deliberate, and the crowd parted like water. When he reached her, he offered his hand. "Ready?" he asked quietly. "No." His mouth twitched. "Good. Neither am I." They walked together toward the center of the room, and Maya felt every gaze on her, assessing, calculating, judging. These weren't wedding guests. They were vultures circling a kill. Antonio Castellano stood near the back, silver hair gleaming, that same cold smile on his face. Vincent stopped in the center of the room, turned to face the crowd, and raised his voice. "Most of you know why we're here," he said. "Some of you question it. All of you are waiting to see if I'll follow through." He paused, his grip on Maya's hand tightening just slightly. "So let me make this clear. Maya Chin is mine, not because I claimed her on a whim, not because she's convenient, but because she's the only person in this room who doesn't want something from me." A murmur rippled through the crowd. "She's also the only person I trust," Vincent continued, "which makes her more valuable than any alliance, any deal, any promise made in rooms like this." He turned to Maya, and the weight of his gaze was staggering. "So I'm making her my partner, my equal, and if any of you have a problem with that," he let the words hang, "then take it up with me." The silence that followed was deafening, and then, from the back of the room, Antonio started clapping, slow, mocking. "Beautiful speech, Vincent," he called out, "but words don't mean much in our world. You know that." Vincent's expression didn't change. "Then what would you suggest?" Antonio stepped forward, his smile widening. "Prove it." "How?" "Blood." The word sent ice through Maya's veins. Antonio gestured to the crowd. "Everyone here knows you're soft, Vincent. You inherited power, but you've never been willing to do what it takes to keep it. So prove us wrong. Show us this woman is worth more than sentiment." He paused. "Kill the man who made her run." Maya's heart stopped. "Marcus." Vincent's hand tightened on hers, and when he spoke, his voice was colder than she'd ever heard it. "Where is he?" Antonio's smile turned vicious. "Outside, waiting. I thought you might appreciate the gesture." Maya couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Vincent turned to her, his expression unreadable. "Do you trust me?" "I don't know." "Yes, you do." He was right. She hated that he was right. "Okay," she whispered. Vincent nodded once. Then he released her hand, turned to Antonio, and said the words that sealed everything. "Bring him in." The doors opened, and Marcus Hale walked into the room, bruised, bloodied, but still smiling that same charming, empty smile, and when his eyes found Maya, he laughed. "Hey, baby," he said. "Miss me?" Marcus walked into the room like he owned it. Blood crusted the corner of his mouth, his left eye swollen nearly shut, his shirt torn at the shoulder. But that smile, that goddamn smile was still there, wide and confident and utterly empty of fear. He moved with the easy swagger of a man who'd been beaten before and survived, who'd learned that pain was temporary, but reputation was everything. Maya's legs locked. Her breath turned to glass in her chest. He looked exactly the same, sounded the same, even smelled the same. Cologne and cigarettes and something darker underneath. Something that had always made her skin crawl, but that she'd learned to ignore because ignoring it was easier than fighting. But now, standing in this room full of predators, with Vincent's hand still warm on hers a moment ago, she saw him differently. He wasn't a monster. He was small, pathetic. A bully who'd mistaken cruelty for power. "Maya," Marcus said again, his voice carrying across the marble floor. "You're looking good. Real good. Guess you cleaned up nice for your new boyfriend." He shifted his attention to Vincent, that smile widening. She always did know how to land on her feet, or on her back, whichever paid better. The room went still. Maya felt the words hit her like a slap, felt the familiar shame crawling up her spine. The same shame Marcus had spent 4 years cultivating, watering, nurturing until it grew thick enough to choke her. But this time, something was different. This time, she didn't flinch. Vincent stepped forward, not rushed, not angry, just a single deliberate step that put him between Maya and Marcus like a wall made of ice and violence. "Say that again," Vincent said quietly. Marcus's smile faltered, just for a second. Then it came back sharper. "What, you didn't know? Didn't ask where she came from before she crashed your pretty little party?" He laughed. "Maya's a survivor, I'll give her that. She knows how to play the victim, how to make men like you think you're saving her when really—" "I said," Vincent interrupted, his voice still calm, still measured. "Say that again." The threat in those 4 words was unmistakable. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it. His gaze flicked to Antonio, to the crowd watching with the patience of sharks circling blood, and something in his expression shifted. He was realizing finally that this wasn't a negotiation. This was an execution waiting to happen. "Look, man," Marcus said, raising his hands in mock surrender. "I'm just telling you the truth. She's got you thinking she's some innocent girl who needs protecting, but the truth," Vincent said, "is that you put your hands on her. You hurt her. You made her afraid to leave her own home. And when she finally found the courage to run, you hunted her through the rain like she was property you'd lost." Marcus's face darkened. She's nothing to you." Vincent's voice dropped to something cold and final. "She never was. You're just a coward who needed someone weaker to make yourself feel strong." Marcus lunged. He made it 3 steps before Vincent moved. It happened so fast, Maya almost missed it. One moment Marcus was charging forward, fists raised, rage twisting his features. The next, he was on the ground, Vincent's hand wrapped around his throat, knee pressed into his chest, and the gun, where had the gun come from, was pressed against Marcus's temple. The room didn't gasp, didn't react, just watched with the cold interest of people who'd seen this play out 1,000 times before. Vincent leaned down, his voice low enough that only Marcus and Maya could hear. "I could kill you right now," he said. "1 bullet. Problem solved. Antonio gets his proof, Maya gets her freedom, and you get what you've had coming for a long time." Marcus's eyes went wide. He tried to speak, but Vincent's grip on his throat tightened. "But that would be too easy," Vincent continued. "Too clean. And you don't deserve clean." He glanced up at Maya, and the question in his eyes was clear. "What do you want me to do?" Maya's hands were shaking. Her heart slammed against her ribs so hard she thought it might crack them. Every instinct screamed at her to look away, to let Vincent handle it, to be the victim one more time, because being the victim meant she didn't have to make the choice. But she'd made a promise to herself 4 nights ago when she climbed out that bathroom window. Never again. She stepped forward. The crowd shifted, murmured. Antonio's expression sharpened with interest. Maya crouched beside Vincent, met Marcus's eyes, and for the first time in 4 years she saw him clearly. Not the charming man who'd promised to take care of her, not the nightmare who'd stolen her sense of safety, just a scared, broken man who'd never learned how to be anything but cruel. "You're right," she said quietly. "I did survive you. I did learn to play the victim. Because that's what you made me." She paused, let the words sink in. "But I'm not her anymore." Marcus's mouth worked. "Maya, please." "No." The word came out hard, final. "You don't get to beg. You don't get to promise it'll be different. You don't get to do anything except disappear. I love you." "You never loved me," Maya said. "You loved having someone you could break." She stood, stepped back, and looked at Vincent. "Let him go." Vincent's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Maya, let him go," she repeated. "He's not worth it. He's not worth the blood. He's just—" She looked at Marcus one last time, saw him scrambling to his knees, gasping for air. "He's nothing." The dismissal landed harder than any bullet could have. Marcus stared at her, something crumbling behind his eyes, and for a moment she thought he might lunge at her, try one last time to reassert the control he'd lost. But then Antonio spoke. How disappointing. The words cut through the tension like a blade. Vincent stood slowly, the gun still in his hand, and turned to face the older man. "Excuse me?" Antonio stepped forward, his expression amused. "I gave you an opportunity to prove yourself, Vincent. To show this room, this family, that you're willing to do what's necessary. And instead, you let the girl make you soft. She made a choice, Vincent said evenly. I'm honoring it. You're showing weakness. Antonio gestured to Marcus, who was still on his knees, coughing. That man disrespected her in front of everyone. He called her a whore. And you're going to let him walk out of here alive? He's not worth killing. Everything is worth killing if it protects your reputation. Antonio's smile turned cold. But I suppose you never learned that. Your father did. Your uncle did. But you... He shook his head. You inherited power you don't know how to keep. Vincent's hand tightened on the gun. Careful, Antonio. Or what? You'll shoot me too? Antonio laughed. You won't. Because you're not a killer, Vincent. You're a businessman playing at being a crime lord, and everyone in this room knows it. The crowd shifted. Whispers started, low, insidious, spreading like poison. Maya felt the ground tilting beneath her feet. This wasn't about Marcus anymore. It had never been about Marcus. You set this up, Vincent said quietly, his gaze locked on Antonio. The restaurant, the meeting, Marcus being here. You orchestrated all of it. Of course I did. Antonio spread his hands. Someone had to expose you for what you are. I just gave you the rope. You're the one who chose to hang yourself with it. Why? Because your family has held power in this city for 3 generations, and in that time you've grown soft, weak. You make deals instead of taking what you want. You negotiate instead of dominating. And worst of all, Antonio's gaze slid to Maya. You let a woman you barely know dictate your actions in front of the people who are supposed to fear you. Vincent's jaw tightened. She's my partner. She's a liability, Antonio corrected. And the fact that you can't see that proves my point. He turned to the crowd. Vincent Torino has lost his edge. He's no longer fit to lead his family, let alone maintain the balance we've built in this city. I'm calling for a vote. Who agrees that it's time for new leadership? The silence that followed was suffocating. Then, slowly, hands started to rise. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. Maya's breath caught. She looked at Vincent, saw the muscle jumping in his jaw, the way his fingers flexed on the gun, and realized with sickening clarity that they'd just walked into a trap with no way out. Antonio had used her, used Marcus, used Vincent's one moment of humanity against him, and it had worked. This is a coup, Vincent said, his voice deadly calm. This is evolution, Antonio replied. The strong replace the weak. You know the rules, Vincent. You wrote half of them. And the other half say that a challenge requires proof of strength, not manipulation, not political maneuvering. Vincent raised the gun, aimed it directly at Antonio's chest. So if you want my seat, old man, you're going to have to take it. Antonio didn't flinch. You won't shoot me. Not here. Not in front of everyone. Because the second you do, you prove me right, that you're ruled by emotion, not strategy. Try me. Vincent. The voice came from the side, the older man from the wedding, the one Vincent had called uncle. He stepped forward, his expression grave. Put the gun down. Stay out of this, uncle. I can't. The older man moved closer, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Antonio's right. You're letting her cloud your judgment. Vincent's gaze snapped to him. Don't. You claimed her to prove a point, to show Marcus you were stronger. But the truth is, you did it because she reminded you of Sophia, because you are still trying to save a sister who doesn't want to be saved. His voice softened. You're a good man, Vincent, but this world doesn't reward good men. It devours them. Then maybe it's time for a different world. There is no different world, the uncle's voice cracked. There's only this one, and in this one, you make the hard choices or you die. So stop pretending you can have both. Stop pretending she can be your partner and your conscience. Because the second you put her before the family, I put her before nothing, Vincent said coldly. She's part of the family now. I made that clear. By refusing to kill a man who disrespected her? Antonio laughed. That's not protection, Vincent. That's cowardice dressed up as mercy. Maya had heard enough. She didn't think, didn't plan, didn't consider the consequences. She just moved. Her hand closed around a shard of broken glass from a shattered champagne flute on a nearby table. When had it broken? She didn't know, didn't care. And before anyone could stop her, she crossed the space between herself and Marcus. He looked up just in time to see her coming. His eyes went wide. Maya, don't! She drove the glass into his shoulder. Not deep, not fatal, just enough to make him scream, just enough to draw blood. Marcus collapsed backward, clutching the wound, and Maya stood over him, chest heaving, the glass still in her hand, her reflection distorted in the red staining the edges. The room went silent. Every eye turned to her. She looked at Antonio, her voice shaking but clear. Is that proof enough for you? Antonio stared at her, something like surprise flickering across his face. Then he started to smile. Well, perhaps there's hope for you yet. Vincent moved to her side, his hand closing over hers, gently prying the glass from her fingers before she could hurt herself. Maya, don't. She pulled away from him, from the warmth of his touch, from the concern in his eyes. Don't tell me I shouldn't have done that. Don't tell me it was a mistake. I'm so sick of being told what I should and shouldn't do. I wasn't going to. She turned to face him, and the look in his eyes stopped her cold. Pride. He looked proud. You didn't have to do that, Vincent said quietly. Yes, I did. Maya's hands were still shaking. You were right. Everything is a choice, and I just made mine. Marcus groaned from the floor, blood seeping through his fingers. You crazy bitch. Shut up, Maya said without looking at him. Or next time I'll aim for your throat. The certainty in her voice made even Marcus go quiet. Antonio stepped closer, studying her like she was a puzzle he was just starting to understand. Interesting. Very interesting. He glanced at Vincent. Perhaps I misjudged the situation. You think? Vincent's tone was dry. I think, Antonio said slowly, that you found yourself a woman with sharper teeth than I anticipated. The question is whether she's loyal to you or just angry at him. Does it matter? Maya asked before Vincent could answer. Antonio's eyebrows rose. Everything matters, my dear. Then let me make it clear. Maya stepped forward, ignoring the way her legs shook, ignoring the blood on her hands, ignoring everything except the need to end this before it swallowed them both. I'm here because I chose to be, not because Vincent forced me, not because I'm running from Marcus, but because, for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw more than something to use. How touching. I'm not finished. Her voice hardened. You want proof that Vincent is strong enough to lead? That he's not soft? Fine. Here it is. He could have killed Marcus the second he walked in that door, could have put a bullet in his head and been done with it. But instead, he gave me the choice, because that's what real power looks like. Not forcing people to do what you want, but giving them the freedom to choose it. Philosophy, Antonio said dismissively. In our world, philosophy is just another word for weakness. Then your world is broken. The words hung in the air like a challenge. Antonio's smile faded. Careful, girl. You're in no position to... I'm in the perfect position, Maya interrupted, because unlike everyone else in this room, I have nothing to lose. You've all spent your entire lives building empires, making deals, protecting reputations, but me? I've already lost everything. So threatening me doesn't work. Intimidating me doesn't work. All you can do is kill me. She paused. And if you do that, you prove Vincent right. That you're just another coward hiding behind power you didn't earn. The silence that followed was absolute. Antonio stared at her, his expression unreadable. Then slowly, he started to laugh. It wasn't a kind sound. You have courage, he said. I'll give you that. Stupid, reckless courage, but courage nonetheless. He turned to Vincent. I underestimated her. That's rare. It won't happen again. Is that a threat? Vincent asked. It's a compliment. Antonio straightened his jacket. But my point stands. You've shown weakness tonight, Vincent. Not because you didn't kill Marcus, though that was a mistake, but because you let a woman you've known for less than a week dictate your actions in front of the families. That sets a precedent, one that will come back to haunt you. Then let it, Vincent said coldly, because I'm not changing course. Antonio studied him for a long moment. Then he nodded. Very well, but don't say I didn't warn you. He gestured to his men. We're leaving. This has been enlightening. He started toward the door, the crowd parting for him, and Maya felt something in her chest unclench slightly. They'd survived. Barely. But they'd survived. Then Antonio stopped, turned, and smiled. Oh, one more thing, he said casually. You asked earlier why Marcus was here, why I brought him. He glanced at Marcus, still clutching his bleeding shoulder. The truth is, he came to me 3 weeks ago. Told me he knew someone close to you, someone who could be useful. Maya's blood went cold. He offered me information, Antonio continued, about your movements, your plans, your weaknesses, all in exchange for help getting his girlfriend back. He paused. Of course, I didn't need his information. I have better sources. But I appreciated the initiative, so I told him I'd arrange a meeting, bring you both together, see what happened. Vincent's hand tightened on the gun. You used him. I used everyone, Antonio corrected, including you, including her. His gaze shifted to Maya. Tell me, my dear, did you ever wonder how Marcus found you at that wedding? How he knew exactly where to go? Maya's heart stopped. It wasn't luck, Antonio said, and it wasn't coincidence. I told him where you'd be, told him when. I wanted to see what Vincent would do when confronted with a direct challenge to his authority, and he did exactly what I expected. He claimed you, made you his responsibility, painted a target on both your backs. You're lying, Maya whispered. Am I? Antonio tilted his head. Ask yourself, why would Marcus show up at a private wedding he had no invitation to, no knowledge of, unless someone told him? Why would he risk walking into a room full of people who could kill him without consequence? He smiled. The answer is simple. I gave him hope. Told him if he made enough noise, if he embarrassed Vincent publicly, Vincent would hand you back just to make him go away. But Vincent didn't, Maya said, her voice shaking. No, Antonio agreed. He did something much more interesting. He chose you, and in doing so, he made you valuable. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent, his one weakness, the crack in his armor. He turned to leave again, throwing his final words over his shoulder. Enjoy your victory, Vincent, but remember, every weakness can be exploited, and I'm a very patient man. Then he was gone, his footsteps echoing across the marble, and the crowd began to disperse, murmuring among themselves, casting glances at Maya and Vincent that ranged from curious to predatory. Maya stood frozen, her mind racing. She'd been bait. From the beginning. Antonio had orchestrated everything. Marcus showing up, the confrontation, the public claiming. He'd turned her into a weapon without her even knowing it. And Vincent? She looked at him, saw the tension in his shoulders. The way his jaw was clenched so tight it had to hurt. Did you know? She asked quietly. Vincent didn't answer right away. He stood there, the gun still in his hand, staring at the door Antonio had walked through. Vincent, Maya said again, did you know? Finally, he turned to her. I knew someone told Marcus where to find you. I didn't know it was Antonio. But you suspected. I suspected a lot of things. And you didn't tell me. No. The honesty of it hit her like a punch. Why not? Because telling you would have changed how you acted, and I needed you to be genuine, to react authentically. If you'd known you were being watched, being used, you would have second-guessed every move, every word. He paused. And that would have gotten you killed. Maya's hands clenched into fists. So you used me too. I protected you. By lying? By keeping you alive. That's not the same thing. In my world, Vincent said quietly. It's the only thing. Maya wanted to scream, wanted to hit him, hurt him, make him feel even a fraction of the betrayal churning through her chest. But her body was shaking too hard, her vision blurring with tears she refused to let fall. Trusted you, she whispered. I know. I chose you. I know. And this entire time you've been playing me like everyone else. Vincent's expression cracked just slightly. No, not like everyone else. Never like everyone else. Then what's the difference? He stepped closer, and this time when he reached for her, she didn't pull away. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone, and the gentleness of it made her chest ache. The difference, Vincent said, his voice rough, is that everyone else sees you as a tool, a means to an end. But when I look at you, I see someone who survived hell and came out fighting. I see someone who stabbed a man with broken glass because she was tired of being afraid. I see... He paused, something flickering in his eyes. I see someone I don't want to lose. You don't even know me. Then let me. Maya's breath hitched. You're asking me to trust you again. After this, I'm asking you to stay. Why? Because you're the first real thing I've had in 10 years. The confession hung between them, raw and unexpected. Maya searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle, but all she saw was exhaustion and something that looked dangerously close to desperation. "If I stay," she said slowly, "no more secrets, no more tests. You tell me everything. I will. And if you lie to me again, I won't. You can't promise that." "No," Vincent agreed, "but I can try." It wasn't enough. It should have been nowhere near enough. But standing there, in the ruins of a plan that had blown up in both their faces, with Marcus bleeding on the floor and the family circling like sharks, Maya realized something terrifying. She didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay. Not because she had nowhere else to go, but because Vincent Torino, liar, manipulator, crime lord, was the first person who'd ever looked at her and seen strength instead of something to break. And that was worth fighting for, even if it killed her. "Okay," she whispered. Vincent's eyes darkened. "Okay? Okay?" He leaned in, and this time he did kiss her. It wasn't soft, wasn't gentle. It was desperate and fierce, and tasted like blood and broken promises. And Maya kissed him back with everything she had left, all the fear and anger and hope she'd been carrying for too long. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "We need to leave," he said quietly. "Before Antonio decides to make another move." Maya nodded. Then she looked down at Marcus, who was still on the floor, clutching his shoulder, staring at them with something between hatred and disbelief. "What about him?" Vincent followed her gaze. "What about him? We just leave him here?" "He's Antonio's problem now." Vincent's voice was cold. "He chose his side. Let him live with it." Marcus's eyes went wide. "Wait, you can't just—" "Yes," Vincent said. "I can." He took Maya's hand and led her toward the exit, stepping over Marcus like he was debris littering the floor. Behind them, Maya heard Marcus start to shout, to plead, to promise he'd be good if they just took him with them. She didn't look back. They walked out of the Castellano estate together, into a night that smelled like rain and gunpowder and the beginning of something neither of them could name. The safe house was different this time, smaller, darker, hidden deep in a part of the city Maya didn't recognize, where the streetlights flickered and the buildings leaned into each other like old men sharing secrets. Vincent led her through a series of locked doors, each one requiring a different code, until they reached a room that looked more like a bunker than an apartment. Concrete walls, minimal furniture, a single window covered with blackout curtains. "How many of these do you have?" Maya asked. "Enough." Vincent locked the door behind them, engaged 3 separate deadbolts. "We'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we figure out next steps." "Next steps," Maya repeated. "You mean damage control?" "I mean survival." She sank onto the edge of the bed. Hard mattress, scratchy sheets, nothing like the penthouse. "Antonio's going to come after us, isn't he?" "Yes." "When?" "Soon." Vincent crossed to a cabinet, pulled out a first aid kit. "But not tonight. Tonight he'll let us think we're safe, let us relax, lower our guard." He turned to her. "Give me your hands." Maya looked down. Her palms were still smeared with blood, Marcus's blood, and there were small cuts from the broken glass she'd grabbed. She held them out. Vincent knelt in front of her, opened the kit, and started cleaning the cuts with methodical precision. His touch was gentle, careful, at odds with everything else about him. "Does it hurt?" he asked. "No." "Liar." "Takes one to know one." His mouth twitched. "Fair." They fell into silence, and Maya watched him work, studied the way his hands moved, steady, practiced, like he'd done this 1,000 times before. "Who taught you?" she asked. "My father." Vincent didn't look up. He believed that if you were going to hurt someone, you should also know how to fix them. Balance, he called it. He finished wrapping her left hand, started on the right. "I think he just didn't want to pay for doctors." "Did you love him?" The question came out before she could stop it. Vincent's hands paused. Then he continued rapping. "I respected him." "That's not the same thing." "Why not?" "Because love requires trust, and my father taught me that trust is the fastest way to get killed." "That's depressing." "That's reality." Maya flexed her fingers, testing the bandages. "Then why are you asking me to trust you?" Vincent finally looked up, and the weight of his gaze made her breath catch. Because I'm hoping you'll prove him wrong. Before she could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the screen, and his expression went cold. What is it? Maya asked. Antonio. Vincent stood, pacing to the window, though he didn't pull back the curtain. He's made his first move. Already? He's fast when he wants to be. Vincent typed something back, his jaw tight. He's calling an emergency council tomorrow night, all the families. What for? To vote on my removal. Maya's stomach dropped. Can he do that? Technically, no. A vote requires unanimous consent from all family heads, and I'm one of them. So I'd have to vote for my own removal, which obviously I won't. Vincent set down the phone. But Antonio doesn't care about technicalities. He cares about perception, and if he can convince enough families that I'm unfit to lead, they'll bypass the rules. So what do? We show up, we make our case, we prove that tonight wasn't weakness, it was strategy. How? Vincent turned to face her. By making them believe that you were the plan all along. That I didn't claim you out of sentiment, but because I knew Antonio would try to use you against me. And by refusing to kill Marcus, I exposed his manipulation, made him look desperate, sloppy. Maya stared at him. But that's not true. No, Vincent agreed, but it's believable. And in our world, belief is more powerful than truth. So we lie. We reframe. That's the same thing. No, Vincent said quietly. A lie is telling people something that didn't happen. Reframing is telling them a different version of what did. The facts are the same. The interpretation is what changes. Maya's head spun. This is insane. This is politics. I hate politics. So do I. Vincent crossed back to her, crouched so they were eye level. But if we don't play the game, Antonio wins. And if Antonio wins, he'll come after you, not to kill you, to use you, to break you, to turn you into exactly what Marcus wanted you to be. A thing, an object, a warning to anyone who thinks they can stand against him. Maya's breath caught. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to prepare you. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. Tomorrow night, every person in that room will be looking for weakness, for cracks, for proof that I made a mistake claiming you, so we need to show them the opposite. We need to be a united front, a partnership that doesn't bend. And if I can't do it, you can. How do you know? Because you stabbed a man with broken glass in front of 50 witnesses and didn't blink. Vincent's eyes softened. You're stronger than you think, Maya. You just need to start believing it. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. But belief was a luxury she'd lost a long time ago. What if I mess up? She whispered. Then we improvise. That's not reassuring. It's the only guarantee I can give you. Maya closed her eyes, felt the weight of the choice pressing down like a physical thing. She could run, could walk out of this bunker, disappear into the city, find some small corner of the world where neither Vincent nor Antonio nor Marcus could reach her. But the truth was simpler and more brutal than any fantasy. There was no corner that small. There was no running far enough. There was only forward. Okay, she said finally. Tell me what to do. Vincent's expression shifted, something that looked almost like relief. First, we need to make sure you look the part. Tomorrow night, you're not walking in as my guest. You're walking in as my equal. That means clothes, jewelry, presents. Everything about you needs to scream power. I don't own anything that screams power. You will by tomorrow. He stood, pulled out his phone again. I'm calling someone. She'll be here in an hour with options. Who? A designer. One who specializes in making people look dangerous. Maya almost laughed. You have a designer for that? I have a designer for everything. An hour later, a woman arrived who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. Tall, angular, dressed entirely in black with silver hair cut sharp as a blade. She introduced herself as Natalia, swept into the room with 3 assistants carrying garment bags, and proceeded to transform the bunker into a makeshift fitting room. Maya stood in the center while Natalia circled her like a predator assessing prey. Natalia said. Good bone structure. Nice proportions. But you carry yourself like someone who's apologizing for existing. That stops now. I don't... Shoulders back, chin up, eyes forward. Natalia's voice was sharp, brooking no argument. You're about to walk into a room full of people who think you're weak. So we're going to make sure that the second they see you, they question that assumption. For the next 2 hours, Maya was measured, dressed, critiqued, and redressed. Natalia rejected the first 4 outfits with single cutting words. Boring. Safe. Forgettable. No. The 5th dress made her pause. It was black. Of course it was black, but unlike anything Maya had ever worn. Structured. Severe. The neckline was high, almost Victorian, but the cut was modern, hugging her frame in a way that suggested armor more than fabric. Long sleeves, no embellishments, just clean lines and absolute confidence. This, Natalia said, this is the one. Maya looked at herself in the mirror they'd brought and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked older, harder, like someone who could stand next to Vincent Torino and not disappear. I don't know if I can pull this off, she said quietly. Natalia stepped beside her, met her eyes in the reflection. The dress doesn't pull itself off. You do. The dress just makes sure people pay attention while you're doing it. What if they don't believe it? Then make them. Natalia's expression softened, just slightly. Power isn't something you're born with, girl. It's something you take. And tomorrow night, you're going to walk into that room and take every ounce of it you can carry. After Natalia left, Maya stood alone in front of the mirror, still wearing the dress, and tried to see what Vincent saw when he looked at her. She couldn't. All she saw was a girl playing dress-up in a world that would eat her alive the second she showed weakness. You look perfect. She turned. Vincent stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. I look terrified, Maya corrected. That too. He crossed to her, stopped close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating off him. But terror and power aren't mutually exclusive. Sometimes the most dangerous people are the ones who are afraid. Is that what you are? Afraid? Every single day. The admission hung between them. What scares you? Maya asked. Vincent's gaze didn't waver. Losing. That's it? Just losing? In my world, losing means death. For me. For everyone I'm responsible for. For you. He reached up, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. So yes. That's it. Maya's breath caught. I'm not your responsibility. Yes, Vincent said quietly. You are. Because you claimed me. Because I chose you. What's the difference? Claiming is what you do to property. Choosing is what you do to people who matter. The words hit her harder than she expected. She opened her mouth, closed it, and before she could overthink it, she stepped forward and kissed him. This time it was different, slower, less desperate. Like they were both trying to figure out what this thing between them actually was beyond survival and strategy and shared trauma. When they broke apart, Vincent rested his hands on her waist, his forehead against hers. Tomorrow's going to be bad, he said quietly. I know. Antonio's going to try to break you, to make you doubt yourself, doubt me, doubt everything. I know. And if he succeeds, he won't, Maya interrupted. I've been broken before. I know what it feels like. And this? She pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. This isn't it. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. A real smile. Small and rare and absolutely devastating. Then let's go remind them why underestimating us is a mistake. The next night came too fast and not fast enough. Maya stood in the bunker, wearing the black dress, her hair pulled back severe and tight, and tried to remember how to breathe. Luca arrived first, followed by 3 other men she didn't recognize. They moved with military precision, checking weapons, reviewing exits, speaking in shorthand that suggested they'd done this 100 times before. Vincent emerged from the back room in a suit that probably cost more than Maya had made in a year. Black, tailored, absolutely lethal. He looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. Ready? He asked. No. Good. Neither am I. They took separate cars, Maya with Luca, Vincent alone. A precaution, Luca explained. If one vehicle was hit, the other could escape. The words did nothing to calm her nerves. They drove through the city in silence, the streets empty this late, and pulled up to a building Maya recognized. The Castellano estate. Of course. Antonio was hosting the council on his own territory. A power play. A message. Vincent's car pulled up beside theirs, and when he stepped out, 3 more vehicles appeared. His reinforcements, though Maya couldn't tell how many were actually loyal versus how many were just covering their own asses. Vincent crossed to her, offered his arm. Stay close, he murmured. Don't react to anything they say. Don't show fear. Don't show doubt. Just stay close. Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. They walked into the estate together. The hall was different this time. Less ostentatious, more severe. The guests had been replaced by family heads, older men mostly, with faces carved from granite and eyes that had seen too much. They stood in clusters, speaking in low voices, and when Vincent and Maya entered, every conversation stopped. The room assessed them, judged them, found them wanting. Antonio stood at the head of a long table, hands clasped behind his back, and when he saw them, he smiled. Vincent? Maya, so glad you could join us. He gestured to two empty chairs. Please, sit. We have much to discuss. Vincent didn't move. This is a farce, Antonio. You know it. I know it. Everyone in this room knows it. Is it? Antonio tilted his head. Or is it long overdue accountability? Call it what you want. The answer is the same. I'm not stepping down. Then we vote. Antonio turned to the assembled families. All in favor of removing Vincent Torino as head of his family due to demonstrated weakness and poor judgment? Hands started to rise. Not all of them, but enough. More than enough. Maya's stomach dropped. She looked at Vincent, saw his jaw tighten, saw the muscle jumping in his cheek. They were losing. Wait! The voice came from the back of the room. Everyone turned. A woman stepped forward, early 60s, elegant, with iron gray hair and eyes that could cut glass. She wore a burgundy suit that looked expensive and carried herself like someone who'd forgotten how to be afraid a long time ago. Vittoria, Vincent said, and something in his tone suggested surprise. The woman, Vittoria, crossed to the table, her heels clicking on marble. Before we vote, I have a question. Antonio's smile tightened. Of course. Vittoria looked at Maya. You're the woman Vincent claimed. It wasn't a question, but Maya answered anyway. Yes. And you're here willingly? Yes. Why? The room went silent. Maya felt every eye on her, felt the weight of the question, felt Vincent's presence beside her like a tether to something solid. She could lie, could give them the answer they expected, that she loved him, that he'd saved her, that she was grateful. But lies were what had gotten them here in the first place. So she told the truth. Because I'm tired of being afraid, Maya said quietly. I spent 4 years letting someone else define who I was, what I was worth. And when I finally found the courage to leave, Vincent gave me the space to figure out who I could be without that weight. She paused. He didn't save me. He gave me the tools to save myself. And that's worth staying for. Vittoria studied her for a long moment. Then she turned to Antonio. You say Vincent is weak because he didn't kill the man who hurt her. I say that shows restraint, discipline, the ability to choose strategy over instinct. She gestured to Maya. And look at what he gained. A woman willing to stab her abuser in front of 50 witnesses. A partner who doesn't flinch when threatened. That's not weakness, Antonio. That's evolution. Antonio's expression darkened. With all due respect, Vittoria, I'm not finished. Vittoria's voice cut through his like a blade. You orchestrated this entire situation to embarrass Vincent, to expose what you perceive as his flaws. But all you did was prove that he's willing to adapt, to build alliances based on mutual respect instead of fear. And frankly, that's something this council could use more of. She turned to the assembled families. I vote no. Vincent stays. The room shifted, another hand lowered, then another. Not everyone, but enough to tip the balance. Antonio's face went cold. This isn't over. Yes, Vittoria said calmly. It is. Unless you want to challenge Vincent directly, in which case, she smiled. I suggest you bring more than manipulation and speeches. The threat was unmistakable. Antonio stared at her, then at Vincent, then at Maya. For a moment, she thought he might actually do it, might pull a gun, might call his men, might turn this into the bloodbath it had been threatening to become all night. But then he straightened his jacket, smoothed his expression, and smiled. Very well. The council has spoken. He nodded to Vincent. Congratulations. You keep your seat, for now. Vincent didn't react, didn't gloat, just inclined his head slightly. Thank you for your time. They left together. Vincent, Maya, Vittoria, and an escort of Vincent's men. No one spoke until they were outside, until the doors closed behind them, and the night air hit Maya's lungs like a gift. Then Vittoria turned to Vincent. "You owe me," she said. "I know. I'll collect eventually." "I know." Vittoria's gaze shifted to Maya. "And you. Don't let him turn you into something you're not." "I won't," Maya said. "Good." Vittoria's expression softened, just slightly. He needs someone who'll tell him the truth, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. "Can you do that?" Maya looked at Vincent, saw the exhaustion in his eyes, the relief, the gratitude. "Yes," she said. "I can." Vittoria nodded. "Then you might actually survive this." She walked away, disappearing into a waiting car, and Maya was left standing beside Vincent in the cooling night, the city spreading out around them like a battlefield they'd somehow managed to cross. "Who was that?" Maya asked. "Vittoria Russo. She runs the shipping operations along the waterfront. One of the few family heads who remembers what it was like before power turned everyone into monsters." Vincent looked at her. "She's also the only person in that room who could have overruled Antonio." "Why did she help us?" "Because she thinks I'm trying to change things, to make this world less brutal." He paused. "She's wrong, but I'm not going to correct her." Maya almost laughed. Almost. Instead, she just leaned against him, let his arm wrap around her shoulders, and tried to process the fact that they'd just survived another night. Barely. "What happens now?" she asked. Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Then he said the words that made her blood run cold. "Now Antonio stops playing games and starts playing for keeps." Vincent's words hung in the air like smoke from a gun that had already been fired. Maya felt them settle into her bones, heavy and cold, and when she looked up at him in the dim light outside the Castellano estate, she saw something in his expression that made her stomach clench. Fear. Not the kind that made you run, the kind that made you dig in deeper because running only delayed the inevitable. "How long do we have?" she asked. Vincent's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Hours. Maybe less." "Before what?" "Before Antonio decides that embarrassing me politically isn't enough. Before he comes for us with everything he has." The night air tasted like rain and exhaust and the metallic edge of violence waiting to happen. Maya pulled away from Vincent's embrace, needing to see his face clearly, needing to understand what they were actually up against. "You knew this would happen," she said. "When Vittoria spoke up, when the vote failed, you knew Antonio wouldn't let it go." "Yes." "Then why didn't we leave? Why didn't we run the second we walked out those doors?" Vincent's gaze drifted past her, scanning the street with the automatic vigilance of someone who'd spent a lifetime expecting ambush. "Because running is what he expects, what he wants. The second we show fear, we prove him right, that I'm not strong enough to hold my position, that you're a liability I can't protect." "So instead we what? Wait for him to attack?" "No." Vincent pulled out his phone, typed something fast. "We move first." "Move how?" Before he could answer, Luca appeared at his elbow, breathing hard, his face pale in the streetlight. "Boss, we've got a problem." Vincent's expression went flat. "How bad?" "3 of our safe houses just went dark, no contact, no response." Luca's hand was on the gun at his hip, knuckles white. "And there's chatter on the police scanners. Multiple units responding to shots fired near the waterfront." "The waterfront?" Vincent's jaw tightened. "That's Vittoria's territory." "Yeah." Luca met his gaze. "And the address they're responding to?" "It's her warehouse. The one where she runs the shipping operations." Maya's breath caught. "Antonio's going after her? Already?" "He's sending a message." Vincent's voice was cold, controlled, but underneath it Maya heard the edge of something sharper. "Help me, and this is what you get. Protection doesn't exist. Loyalty doesn't matter. Only power." "We have to help her," Maya said. Vincent turned to her. "No." "What?" "We can't. If we go to Vittoria now, we walk straight into whatever trap Antonio's set. He knows we're grateful to her, knows we owe her. He's counting on us to react emotionally instead of strategically." "So we just let her die?" "I didn't say that." Vincent was already moving, gesturing for Luca to follow, pulling Maya toward the car. "I said we can't help her directly, but there are other ways to fight." They climbed into the back of the sedan, and the second the door closed, Vincent was on his phone again, making calls in rapid Italian, his voice clipped and vicious. Maya caught fragments, names she didn't recognize, locations, numbers that might have been money or might have been body counts. The car pulled away from the Castellano estate, moving fast through streets that were too empty for this time of night, like the city itself was holding its breath. "What are you doing?" Maya asked when Vincent finally lowered the phone. "Calling in debts, activating assets, reminding people that Antonio doesn't own this city. He just thinks he does." Vincent's gaze was focused on something she couldn't see, some invisible board where he was moving pieces faster than she could track. "Vittoria helped us. Now I'm making sure she survives long enough to regret it. That's not funny." It wasn't meant to be. The car swerved around a corner and Maya grabbed the door handle to steady herself. Her heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat, her wrists, her temples. Everything was moving too fast. Too much. 20 minutes ago, they'd been standing in a council chamber, narrowly avoiding political execution. Now they were racing through the city, while somewhere across town, a woman who'd saved them was under attack. "Where are we going?" Maya asked. Vincent finally looked at her, and the intensity in his gaze made her forget how to breathe. "Somewhere Antonio won't expect, somewhere he can't reach. Not without starting a war he's not ready to fight." "Where?" "The one place in this city that doesn't belong to any family, that exists outside the power structure, outside the rules." He paused. "The restaurant." Maya blinked. "Your restaurant? The one where we had lunch?" "It's more than a restaurant." Vincent's hand found hers squeezed once. "It's neutral ground. Has been for 20 years. Any family can eat there, conduct business, make deals, but violence is forbidden. The second someone breaks that rule, every family in the city turns on them. It's the one piece of peace we've managed to maintain. And you think Antonio won't violate it? I think he's desperate, and desperate men make mistakes." Vincent's mouth curved, sharp and cold. "I'm counting on it." The restaurant appeared ahead, small, understated, the kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without noticing. But when they pulled up, Maya saw the guards positioned at the corners, the cameras hidden in the eaves, the way the building sat like a fortress disguised as something ordinary. They climbed out. The night had gone quiet in the wrong way. No traffic, no voices, just the whisper of wind through empty streets. Vincent led her inside. The interior was exactly as she remembered. White tablecloths, soft lighting, the smell of garlic and wine and old wood, but now it was empty. No diners, no staff, just silence. And sitting at a table in the back, a glass of red wine in his hand, and that same cold smile on his face, was Antonio Castellano. Maya's blood turned to ice. Vincent didn't slow, didn't react, just walked straight to the table like he'd been expecting this all along. Maybe he had. "Antonio," Vincent said calmly, "breaking your own rules?" "Not at all." Antonio gestured to the empty restaurant. "I reserved the entire establishment for the evening, paid handsomely for the privacy. No violence, just conversation." He glanced at Maya, and perhaps a lesson in consequence. Vincent pulled out a chair, sat. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand something." Antonio leaned forward, his expression serious for the first time since Maya had met him. "This city has rules, balance, order. Your father understood that. Your uncle understood that. But you," he shook his head, "you think you can rewrite the rules because you have a conscience, because you want to be better than the men who came before you. That's so wrong? It's suicidal." Antonio's voice hardened. "The second you show weakness, the second you prioritize one person over the family, the system collapses. Rivals smell blood. Allies question loyalty. Everything our fathers built crumbles." "Or," Vincent said quietly, "it evolves, becomes something that doesn't require constant violence to maintain." Antonio laughed, actually laughed. "You still believe that? After tonight? After I showed you exactly how fragile your position is?" He set down his wine glass. "Vincent, I don't want to destroy you. I want you to wake up, to remember what you are, what we all are." "And what's that?" "Predators." Antonio's gaze shifted to Maya. "Not heroes, not saviors. Predators who survive by being stronger, faster, more ruthless than everyone else. And the second you forget that, the second you let something like her make you soft, you die." Maya felt the words hit her like a physical blow. She wanted to speak, to defend herself, to tell Antonio he was wrong, but Vincent's hand found hers under the table, Squeezed once, a warning. Stay quiet. Let me handle this. You're right, Vincent said. Antonio's eyebrows rose. I'm sorry? You're right. I did let her make me soft. I claimed her without thinking through the consequences. I prioritized her safety over strategic advantage. I made emotional decisions instead of rational ones. Vincent paused. But that's not weakness, Antonio. That's calculation. Explain. You orchestrated everything. Marcus showing up, the confrontation, the vote. You wanted to expose me, embarrass me, prove I was unfit to lead. Vincent's voice was steady, relentless. But what you actually did was give me something no one in this room has. A partner who isn't bound by blood or obligation or fear. Someone who chose to stand beside me knowing exactly what it would cost. Sentiment, Antonio dismissed. Unpredictability. Vincent leaned forward. You know how I'll react to threats against my family. You know my patterns, my weaknesses, my limits, but her? He glanced at Maya. You have no idea what she's capable of, and that terrifies you. The silence that followed was absolute. Antonio stared at Vincent, something flickering behind his eyes. Confusion, maybe, or the first edge of doubt. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, read the screen, and his expression went cold. It seems, Antonio said slowly, that someone has been making calls on Vittoria's behalf, mobilizing resources, redirecting assets, turning what should have been a simple message into a costly mistake. He looked up. That was you. That was strategy, Vincent corrected. That was interference. That was survival. Vincent stood, and Maya rose with him, her hand still locked in his. You wanted to teach me a lesson about consequences, Antonio. So here's mine. Every time you come after someone I care about, I'll make it cost you. Not just money, not just men. Reputation, standing, the very thing you're so desperate to protect. Antonio stood as well, his movement slow, controlled. You're declaring war. I'm defending my position. There's a difference. Not from where I'm standing. Then maybe, Vincent said quietly, you're standing in the wrong place. For a moment, Maya thought Antonio would reach for a weapon, would call his men, would turn this neutral ground into a bloodbath and damn the consequences. But instead, he smiled. It was the most terrifying thing she'd seen all night. I underestimated you, Antonio said. Both of you. That won't happen again. He straightened his jacket. Enjoy your evening, Vincent. What's left of it? He walked out, and the restaurant seemed to exhale. Vincent didn't move, didn't relax, just stood there, watching the door, his body coiled tight. What just happened? Maya whispered. We bought ourselves time. Vincent pulled out his phone, checked something, swore under his breath. Not much, but enough. Enough for what? To end this before it gets worse. He was already moving, pulling her toward the back exit, and Maya followed because what else could she do? They emerged into an alley that smelled like rotting vegetables and old rain, and waiting there was a different car, nondescript, ordinary, the kind you'd never look at twice. A woman sat in the driver's seat, early 30s, dark hair pulled back, eyes that missed nothing. She nodded at Vincent. Boss? Elena, status? Vittoria's secure, took some damage, but nothing fatal. Antonio's men retreated when our reinforcements showed up. Elena's gaze flicked to Maya, assessing. And the other thing? In motion. Vincent opened the back door, gestured for Maya to get in. Take us to the pier, slip 7. Elena pulled out into traffic, and Maya finally found her voice. What other thing? Vincent didn't answer right away. He was staring at his phone again, typing something, and the glow from the screen cast his face in harsh angles. Vincent, Maya said again, what other thing? Antonio made a mistake tonight, Vincent said finally. He showed his hand, revealed how far he's willing to go, how many rules he'll break to win. He looked up. So I'm going to make him pay for it. How? By doing what he'd never expect, by going after the one thing he values more than power. Which is? Vincent's expression was granite. His son. Maya's stomach dropped. You're going to kidnap his son? I'm going to make him think I will. There's a difference. Not much of one. Enough of one to matter. Vincent turned to face her fully. Antonio's son, Carlo, is studying in Europe, Switzerland, completely removed from the family business. Antonio keeps him there intentionally, away from the violence, the politics, the life. He paused. It's the one piece of Antonio's world that's clean, and I'm going to threaten it. That's, Maya struggled for words, that's monstrous. That's survival. It's the same thing he's doing to us. Exactly. Vincent's voice was hard. He went after Vittoria to send a message. I go after Carlo to send one back. That's how this works, Maya. Action, reaction, escalation until someone blinks. And if he doesn't blink, then we find out how far I'm willing to go. The car turned onto a waterfront street, and through the window, Maya could see the docks stretching out into darkness, cranes and cargo containers, and the slow roll of waves against concrete. I can't be part of this, Maya said quietly. Vincent's jaw tightened. You already are. No, I signed up to survive, to stay alive, not to... She gestured helplessly. Not to terrorize someone's kid because his father is a bastard. Carlo is 23 years old, hardly a kid. That doesn't make it right. Nothing about this is right. Vincent's control finally cracked, his voice rising. You think I want to do this? You think I enjoy playing these games? I'm trying to keep us both alive, Maya. And if that means making Antonio believe I'm willing to cross lines I'd never actually cross, then that's what I'll do. You're bluffing. I'm strategizing. It's the same thing. No, Vincent said. It's not. A bluff is a lie. A strategy is a calculated risk based on your opponent's perception of what you might do. He leaned closer. Antonio thinks I'm soft, weak, sentimental, so I'm going to make him question that. Make him wonder if maybe, just maybe, he pushed me too far. Maya stared at him. This man who'd claimed her, protected her, kissed her like she mattered, and realized with sickening clarity that she didn't actually know him at all. Who are you? She whispered. Vincent's expression shuddered. I'm the man trying to keep you alive, even if you hate me for it. The car stopped. Elena turned around. We're here. Vincent climbed out first, offered his hand. Maya hesitated, staring at that outstretched palm, and felt the weight of another choice pressing down. Stay in the car. Refuse to be part of this. Let Vincent handle it alone and live with whatever consequences came. Or step out. Stay beside him. See this through to whatever brutal end was waiting. She took his hand. They walked out onto the pier together, the ocean spreading black and endless beyond the docks, and waiting at Slip 7 was a boat Maya didn't recognize. Sleek. Fast. The kind of thing that could outrun anything the Coast Guard had. A man stood on the deck, 50s, weathered, with the look of someone who'd spent more time on water than land. He nodded when he saw Vincent. It's ready. Good. Vincent turned to Maya. Wait here. Like hell. Maya. No. She pulled her hand free. You don't get to drag me into this and then tell me to sit on the sidelines. If you're doing this, if you're actually going through with threatening an innocent person, I'm watching. I'm bearing witness. And if it goes wrong, I'll be there to tell you I told you so. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Fine. But stay behind me. And if I tell you to run, you run. No arguments. They boarded the boat together. The interior was sparse. Just a navigation console, some seating, and a locked cabinet that probably held weapons Maya didn't want to think about. The weathered man, the captain, she assumed, started the engine, and they pulled away from the dock with barely a sound. The city shrank behind them, lights bleeding into the darkness, and Maya stood on the deck with the wind tearing at her hair and tried to process how the hell she'd ended up here. 2 weeks ago, she'd been running through the rain from a man who'd spent 4 years breaking her down. Now she was on a boat in the middle of the night with a crime lord planning to threaten someone's son to win a war she barely understood. Where are we going? She asked. Vincent was on his phone again, coordinating something with people she couldn't see. Far enough out that we can make the call without anyone tracing it. Close enough that we can get back before Antonio realizes what's happening. And then what? Then we wait, see if he blinks. And if he doesn't? Vincent pocketed his phone, moved to stand beside her at the railing. Then we escalate. To what? Actually kidnapping Carlo? To making Antonio believe we already have. Maya's breath caught. How? Carlo posts on social media, religiously. Photos of his campus, his friends, his coffee. Very predictable. Very traceable. Vincent's voice was clinical, detached. We already have people monitoring his accounts. The second he posts something new, we'll use the metadata to pinpoint his location, send someone to take a photo of him from across the street, and then send it to Antonio with a message. What message? That we know where his son is, what he's doing, who he's with, and that if Antonio doesn't back down, we'll make Carlo disappear so thoroughly not even Swiss police will find him. You're talking about ruining someone's life. I'm talking about saving ours. Maya turned away, gripped the railing hard enough that her knuckles went white. The ocean stretched out in every direction, dark and infinite, and she felt like she was drowning in it. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Vincent's hand found the small of her back, warm and steady. You don't have to do anything. Just be here. That's enough. Is it? It has to be. The boat cut through the water for another 20 minutes, and when they were far enough out that the shore was just a smear of light on the horizon, the captain killed the engine. Silence settled like a blanket. Vincent pulled out a different phone, a burner probably, and dialed a number he must have had memorized. It rang twice. Then Antonio's voice filled the quiet. I was wondering when you'd call. Then you know why I am, Vincent said. Enlighten me. Your son, Carlo, currently attending the University of Zurich, lives in an apartment on Ramesstrasse, drinks his coffee at a cafe called Odeon, goes for a run every morning at 6. Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless. Shall I continue? The silence on the other end was electric. You wouldn't dare, Antonio said finally. Try me. He's not part of this. He doesn't even know what I do. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you went after Vittoria, before you tried to destroy me in front of the families, before you made this personal. Vincent's grip on the phone tightened. I gave you an out, Antonio. I let you walk away from that restaurant with your dignity intact, but you couldn't leave it alone. You're bluffing. Am I? Check your phone. I'm sending you something. Vincent lowered the burner, pulled out his regular phone, sent something. Maya couldn't see what. A moment later, Antonio swore. Viciously. That's Carlo leaving his apartment 2 hours ago, Vincent said. Taken from across the street. By someone I have positioned there right now. Say the word, and they move from surveillance to acquisition. And once we have him, he let the threat hang. You're making a mistake, Antonio said, and for the first time Maya heard something in his voice she hadn't before. Fear. No, Vincent said quietly. You made a mistake. You thought I wouldn't cross this line, that I'd stay within the boundaries of acceptable violence, that I'd play the game the way you expected. But you were wrong. If you touch him, then what? Vincent interrupted. You'll come after me? You're already doing that. You'll kill Maya? You were planning to do that anyway. So what exactly do I have to lose, Antonio? Tell me. Because from where I'm standing, the only person with something precious at stake is you. The silence stretched so long Maya thought the connection had dropped. Then Antonio spoke, and his voice was different, harder, colder. What do you want? I want you to stop, completely. No more attacks on Vittoria, no more votes, no more political maneuvering. You go back to your territory, I go back to mine, and we pretend tonight never happened. And if I refuse? Then you spend the rest of your life wondering when Carlo's going to disappear, wondering if that photo you just saw is the last time you'll ever know where he is, wondering if every phone call, every email, every moment of silence means he's already gone. You're a bastard. I'm my father's son. Vincent's voice was ice. So what's it going to be? Maya held her breath, the ocean rocking beneath them, and waited. Finally, Antonio spoke. Fine. You win. This time. Not good enough. I need your word. Bound by the same rules that govern this city. Break it, and every family will turn on you. Another silence. Then, you have my word. Say it. I, Antonio Castellano, give my word that I will cease all hostile action against Vincent Torino and his associates, effective immediately, bound by the laws of our families and witnessed by, he paused, by whoever the hell you have listening to this call. Vincent's shoulders relaxed fractionally. Good, then we're done. For now, forever. We'll see. The line went dead. Vincent lowered the phone, stared at it for a moment, then turned to Maya. It's over. She wanted to feel relief, wanted to collapse, to cry, to let all the fear and adrenaline drain out of her in one cathartic rush, but all she felt was numb, Is it? She asked quietly. Vincent moved closer. Yes. Antonio won't risk his son. Not for me. Not for this. And the people watching Carlo? The ones you have positioned across the street? Vincent's expression didn't change. They're already gone. I called them off the second Antonio agreed to the terms. So you were bluffing. I was strategizing. It's the same. Maya stopped herself, shook her head. Never mind. I don't care anymore. Maya, no. She stepped back, put space between them. You did what you had to do. You saved us. You won. Congratulations. Her voice cracked. But don't ask me to be okay with it. Don't ask me to pretend that threatening an innocent person's life is just another Tuesday in your world. It's not about being okay with it, Vincent said. It's about survival. And sometimes survival requires, I know what it requires. Maya's voice rose. I spent 4 years learning exactly what it requires. The lies, the compromises, the pieces of yourself you cut away to make it through one more day. I know, Vincent. Better than you think. Then you understand why I did it. Understanding doesn't make it right. No, Vincent agreed, but it makes it necessary. They stood there on the deck, the distance between them feeling wider than the ocean surrounding them, and Maya realized with a sick certainty that nothing would ever be simple between them. Not trust, not honesty, not even love, if that's what this thing growing between them actually was. It would always be complicated by violence and strategy and the brutal calculus of survival. Take me back, she said quietly. Maya, please, just take me back. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded and called to the captain. Turn us around. The boat roared to life, cutting back toward the city, and Maya stood at the railing and watched the lights grow closer. Behind her, Vincent made more calls, cleaned up the operation, dismantled the threat as efficiently as he'd constructed it. And Maya stood there, alone, and wondered what the hell she was supposed to do now. They docked just before dawn. The city was starting to wake. Delivery trucks, early commuters, the slow bleed of light across the skyline. Luca was waiting on the pier with 2 other men, and when he saw Vincent, he visibly relaxed. Boss, Vittoria's people confirmed Antonio standing down. He's pulling back across the board. Whatever you said to him, Luca shook his head. It worked. Good. Vincent glanced at Maya. Get her somewhere safe, somewhere quiet. I need to handle cleanup. Where are you going? Maya asked. To make sure Antonio keeps his word, to shore up alliances, to... He trailed off, rubbed his face. To do what needs to be done. Without me. You need rest. What I need, Maya said, is to know this is actually over. It is. Prove it. Vincent looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. I can't. Not yet. Not until I've secured every angle, closed every gap, made absolutely certain that Antonio doesn't find a way around his promise. He stepped closer. But I will. I swear to you, Maya. This ends today. She wanted to believe him, wanted it so badly it hurt. But belief was a luxury she'd lost a long time ago. Fine, she said. I'll wait. Vincent nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For all of it. Which part? The part where I made you complicit in something you didn't sign up for. The part where I used Antonio's son as leverage. The part where I... He paused. Where I made you see exactly what I'm capable of. Maya's throat tightened. And what are you capable of, Vincent? He met her gaze, and the honesty in his eyes was devastating. Anything, as long as it keeps you alive. Then he walked away, disappearing into a car with Luca, and Maya was left standing on the dock with the 2 silent guards and the rising sun painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. Tiraset. They took her to a different safe house, this one in a neighborhood she didn't recognize, tucked between a laundromat and a closed restaurant. The guards positioned themselves outside, and Maya climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor alone. The apartment was small, clean, anonymous. She showered, washing off the salt and fear and exhaustion, and stood under the hot water until her skin turned pink and her fingers pruned. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel with her hair dripping down her back, she found clothes laid out on the bed. Simple. Comfortable. The kind of thing you wore when the world had finally stopped trying to kill you. She dressed slowly, her body aching in new ways, and sat on the edge of the bed. Her phone, the one Marcus had been calling, the one she'd kept despite every instinct screaming to throw it away, sat on the nightstand. She picked it up. 15 missed calls, all from the same number. Not Marcus. Vincent. She stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the callback button, and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to say. Before she could decide, the phone buzzed. A text. From Vincent. It's done. Antonio signed a formal peace accord, witnessed by 3 neutral families. We're safe. Relief flooded through her, so intense it was almost painful. Another text arrived. I'm coming to get you. Be ready in 20 minutes. She typed back. For what? The response was immediate. For the rest of our lives. Maya stared at the words, her heart pounding, and felt something shift inside her, something that had been broken for so long she'd forgotten what whole felt like. She typed, okay. Then she stood, finished getting ready, and waited. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. She opened it. Vincent stood there, still in the same clothes from the boat, dark circles under his eyes, exhaustion written in every line of his body. But when he saw her, he smiled. A real smile. Small and tired and absolutely devastating. Hey, he said. Hey, can I come in? Maya stepped aside and he crossed the threshold, closing the door behind him. They stood there in the small apartment, the morning light filtering through cheap curtains, and for a moment neither of them spoke. Then Vincent said, I meant what I said. On the boat. I'm sorry. I know. And I meant what I texted. It's done. Really done. Antonio signed the accord in front of witnesses. Vittoria co-signed as neutral party. It's binding, enforceable. If he breaks it, every family in the city will come down on him. So we're safe, Maya said quietly. We're safe. She should have felt relieved. Should have collapsed into his arms, let him hold her, let herself believe it was finally over. But something was stopping her. What happens now? She asked. Vincent stepped closer. That's up to you. Me. You. He reached out, tucked a strand of damp hair behind her ear. I claimed you, protected you, dragged you into a world you never asked to be part of. But that ends now. You want to leave? I'll help you. New identity, new city. Enough money to start over somewhere Antonio will never find you. You want to stay? His voice softened. Then we figure out what this thing between us actually is. Maya's breath caught. And what do you think it is? I think, Vincent said slowly, that you're the first person in 10 years who's made me want to be better than what I am. Not perfect, not some reformed saint, just less of a monster. You're not a monster. I threatened a man's son to win a war. You saved us. Same thing. No, Maya said, echoing his words from earlier. It's not. Vincent's expression cracked, and she saw it then. The weight he'd been carrying, the choices that haunted him, the brutal calculus of a man trying to survive a world that rewarded cruelty and punished compassion. She stepped forward, closed the distance between them, and kissed him. Not desperate, not fierce, just steady, solid, real. When they broke apart, Vincent rested his forehead against hers, his hands framing her face like she was something precious. Stay, he whispered. I don't know if I can, Maya admitted. I don't know if I'm strong enough for this world. You stabbed a man with broken glass. You walked into a council chamber and demanded respect. You stood on a boat in the middle of the ocean and called me out for crossing a line. He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. You're the strongest person I know. Or the stupidest. Those aren't mutually exclusive. She almost laughed. Almost. If I stay, Maya said quietly, things have to change. No more secrets. No more using me as bait without telling me. No more making decisions about my life without asking me first. Deal. And I want to learn. Vincent's eyebrows rose. Learn what? How this world works. How to defend myself. How to be your partner instead of your liability. She paused. If I'm going to survive here, I need to be more than just the woman you claimed. I need to be someone who can stand on her own. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, I'll teach you. Everything. But on one condition. What? You promise me that if it gets to be too much, if this life starts to break you the way it broke Sophia, you'll tell me. and we'll find another way. Maya searched his face, looking for the lie, the manipulation, the angle. All she saw was a man asking her to trust him one more time. Okay, she whispered. Vincent kissed her again, slower this time, and when they finally broke apart, the sun had risen fully, painting the apartment in gold. So what happens now? Maya asked. Vincent's mouth curved. Now we go home. We sleep for about 12 hours, and then... He paused. Then we start building something new. Like what? I don't know yet. He took her hand, laced their fingers together. But we'll figure it out. Together. They left the safe house hand in hand, stepped out into a city that was waking up around them, and for the first time in 2 weeks, in 4 years, in maybe her entire life, Maya felt something that almost resembled hope. It was fragile, uncertain, easily broken, but it was hers, and she was going to fight like hell to keep it. Young. The penthouse looked different in daylight, less sterile, more like a home. Vincent led her inside, and Maya collapsed onto the couch, with a groan that came from somewhere deep in her bones. Every muscle ached, every thought felt sluggish, weighed down by exhaustion. Vincent sat beside her, pulled her against his chest, and they stayed like that for a long time, just breathing, just existing, just letting the adrenaline finally drain away. What are you thinking? Vincent asked eventually. Maya closed her eyes. That 2 weeks ago I was running through the rain with nowhere to go, and now I'm sitting in a penthouse with a crime lord who threatened to kidnap someone's son to save my life. When you put it that way, it sounds insane. It is insane. Yeah. Vincent's hand moved through her hair, gentle and rhythmic. But it's ours. Maya smiled despite herself. Is that what we're calling this? Ours? Unless you have a better word. She thought about it. About everything that had happened, everything she'd survived, everything she'd become in the span of 2 impossible weeks. No, she said finally. Ours works. They sat there as the sun climbed higher, as the city outside moved through its rhythms, as the world slowly remembered how to be normal. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Maya let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, she'd finally found something worth staying for. Even if it was complicated, even if it was dangerous, even if it meant becoming someone she never thought she'd be. It was hers, and that was enough. Vincent's phone buzzed one more time, and he glanced at it, then set it face down on the table. Anything important? Maya asked. Nothing that can't wait. You sure? I'm sure. He pulled her closer. Right now, the only thing that matters is right here. Maya settled against him, felt his heartbeat steady beneath her ear, and closed her eyes. Tomorrow they'd start building whatever this new life looked like. Tomorrow, they'd figure out how to navigate a world that had tried to destroy them both. Tomorrow, they'd face whatever came next. But today? Today they just existed, together. And for now, that was more than enough. Outside, the city stretched on, beautiful and brutal and unforgiving. But inside, in the quiet space between one heartbeat and the next, Maya Chin finally stopped running, and Vincent Torino finally found something worth protecting that wasn't. The peace lasted exactly 3 days. Maya woke on the 4th morning to the sound of breaking glass. She bolted upright, heart slamming against her ribs, and reached for Vincent, but his side of the bed was cold, empty, like he'd been gone for hours. Another crash, this time closer, followed by voices, sharp, angry, speaking Italian too fast for her to follow. She had grabbed the first thing she could find, one of Vincent's shirts, and pulled it on as she moved toward the bedroom door. Her hands were shaking, her bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. The voices were coming from the living room. She pressed herself against the wall, inched forward, and peered around the corner. Vincent stood in the center of the room, still in the clothes he'd worn to bed, his face carved from stone. Blood dripped from a cut above his left eye, and his knuckles were split open like he'd been hitting something hard. Or someone. Luca was there too, along with 3 other men Maya recognized from Vincent's security detail. They formed a loose circle around someone kneeling on the floor. Marcus. Maya's breath stopped. He looked worse than she'd ever seen him. Face swollen, one eye completely shut, shirt torn and stained with blood that was definitely his. His hands were zip-tied behind his back, and when he tried to lift his head, one of Vincent's men kicked him hard in the ribs. Marcus crumpled with a sound that was half scream, half sob. Again, Vincent said quietly. Boss, Luca started. I said again. The man kicked Marcus again, harder this time. Maya felt bile rise in her throat. She should have looked away, should have gone back to the bedroom, pretended she hadn't seen this, let Vincent handle whatever the hell this was. But she couldn't move. Where is he? Vincent crouched in front of Marcus, his voice so calm it was almost gentle. Where's Antonio? Marcus laughed, actually laughed, though it came out wet and broken. You think he tells me anything? I'm just the bait man, the distraction. He spat blood onto the floor. He's using me the same way you used that girl. Vincent's hand shot out, grabbed Marcus by the throat, slammed him backward against the floor. Don't. What? Marcus choked out. Don't tell the truth. Don't mention that you're no better than me, that you took someone weak and turned them into a weapon. The difference, Vincent said, his voice dropping to something lethal, is that I gave her a choice. You never did. Bullshit. You gave her the illusion of choice, just like Antonio gave me, just like all you powerful bastards do. Marcus's working eye found Vincent's. We're the same, you and me. We just dress it up different. Vincent's grip tightened. For a moment, Maya thought he was actually going to crush Marcus's windpipe right there on the living room floor. Then he let go, stood, turned away. Get him out of here, Vincent said to Luca. Put him somewhere Antonio will find him, somewhere public, somewhere that sends a message. What message? Luca asked. That if he breaks the accord again, next time it won't be his errand boy bleeding on the concrete. It'll be his son. Maya's stomach lurched. She must have made a sound because Vincent's head snapped toward the hallway. Their eyes met, and the look on his face, exhausted, furious, something close to broken, made her chest ache. Maya, he said quietly, go back to bed. What's happening? Nothing you need to see. Vincent, please. The word cracked. Just go back to bed. She wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, to understand why Marcus was bleeding on their floor, why Vincent looked like he'd been fighting for hours, why everything they'd supposedly won 3 days ago was falling apart already. But the exhaustion in Vincent's voice stopped her. She nodded, turned, walked back to the bedroom and closed the door, but she didn't get back in bed. She pressed her ear against the wood and listened. Boss, Luca was saying, what do you want us to do with him after we dump him? Follow him, see where he goes, who he contacts. Antonio's planning something. Marcus showing up here isn't random. It's a probe, a test to see how we'd react. And if they're watching the building right now, then they saw exactly what I wanted them to see, that I'm willing to break bones to protect what's mine. Vincent paused. Take him, now, before Maya comes back out here and sees more than she should. Footsteps, grunts, the sound of Marcus being dragged across the floor. Then the front door opening, closing, silence. Maya waited another minute, then opened the bedroom door. Vincent stood alone in the middle of the living room, staring at the blood on the floor like it was a problem to be solved. He'd grabbed a towel from somewhere and was pressing it against the cut above his eye. You didn't go back to bed, he said without looking at her. You knew I wouldn't. Yeah, he finally turned. I hoped you would anyway. Maya crossed to him, took the towel from his hand and gestured for him to sit. He did, sinking onto the couch like every bone in his body ached. She cleaned the cut carefully, methodically, the way he'd cleaned her hands after she'd stabbed Marcus with broken glass. The symmetry of it wasn't lost on her. What happened? She asked quietly. Marcus broke into the building, made it all the way to our floor before security caught him. Vincent's jaw tightened. He had a gun. Maya's hand stilled. He was going to kill you. He was going to kill you. Vincent met her gaze. He told them, told security, that if he couldn't have you, no one could, that you belonged to him, that I'd stolen his property and he was taking it back. The words hit her like a fist. So I made sure he understood, Vincent continued, his voice flat, that you were never his property, that you never will be, and that if he ever comes near you again, I'll kill him, slowly, painfully, in a way that makes tonight look like mercy. Maya set down the towel, her hands shaking. Did Antonio send him? I don't know. Maybe. Maybe Marcus is just that desperate, that broken. Vincent rubbed his face. Either way, it doesn't matter. He came here, threatened you. That's enough. You should have killed him. Vincent's eyes snapped to hers, surprised. I'm serious, Maya said. You keep letting him go. Keep sending messages. Keep trying to scare him off. But he's not going to stop, Vincent. People like Marcus don't stop. They just keep coming back until someone makes them. You want me to kill him, Vincent said slowly. After everything you said on the boat, about not wanting to be complicit in violence, about crossing lines. I said I didn't want to threaten innocent people. Maya's voice was steady, hard. Marcus isn't innocent. He's a threat. And I'm tired of living in fear that one day he's going to succeed. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he reached out, cupped her face, and kissed her forehead. Okay, he said quietly. If that's what you want, if that's the choice you're making, then okay. It is. Then I'll handle it. When? Soon. Vincent pulled her down beside him on the couch, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. But not tonight. Tonight we rest. Tomorrow we plan. And the day after, he trailed off. The day after we end this, Maya finished. Yeah. They sat in silence, the city beginning to wake beyond the windows, and Maya felt something shift inside her, something that had been resisting this world, this life, this brutal calculus of survival. She'd spent 4 years being Marcus's victim, 2 weeks being Vincent's protected asset, but sitting here now, with blood still drying on the floor and the weight of a death sentence on her shoulders, she realized she was becoming something else entirely. She was becoming a survivor who fought back. And maybe, just maybe, that was who she'd always been meant to be. They spent the next day planning. Vincent made calls, coordinated with people Maya didn't know, moved pieces on a board she was only beginning to understand. She sat beside him through most of it, listening, learning, absorbing the language of this world like a second tongue. By evening, they had a plan. Marcus had gone to ground after being dumped in the warehouse district. Luca's people had tracked him to a motel on the outskirts of the city, the kind of place that rented rooms by the hour and didn't ask questions. He's alone, Luca reported. No security, no backup, just him and whatever delusions are keeping him going. Perfect, Vincent said. We move tonight. Both of us? Maya asked. Vincent looked at her. You don't have to be there. I can handle this alone. I know you can. Maya stood, crossed to the window, stared out at the city that had become her battlefield. But I need to be there. I need to see it through. Maya, he spent 4 years making me afraid to exist, she said quietly. I need to be there when that ends. I need to see his face when he realizes I'm not afraid anymore. Vincent didn't argue, just nodded once. Okay, but you stay in the car, you watch, you don't engage. If something goes wrong, I run, I know. I'm serious. So am I. She turned to face him. I'm not the same woman who crashed your wedding 2 weeks ago. I'm not helpless, I'm not fragile, so stop treating me like I'm going to break. Vincent crossed to her, moved slowly like he was approaching something wild that might bolt. When he reached her, he took her hands, held them tight. I don't think you're going to break, he said. I'm terrified you're going to turn into something you can't come back from, that this world is going to hollow you out the same way it did Sophia, the same way it's doing to me. His voice roughened. I don't want that for you. Maya squeezed his hands. Then help me stay human. Remind me what I'm fighting for when I forget. Be the thing that keeps me tethered. She paused. But don't try to protect me from the consequences of my own choices. I need to own this. All of it. Vincent searched her face, looking for doubt, for fear, for anything that suggested she didn't understand what she was asking. But Maya knew exactly what she was asking. She was asking to cross the line from victim to something else. Something harder. Something that could survive in Vincent's world without disappearing into it. Okay, Vincent said finally. We do this together. They left the penthouse at midnight. The city was different at this hour. Quieter, darker, full of shadows that moved with purpose. They took an unmarked car, just the two of them, and drove through streets Maya was starting to recognize. The motel appeared on the horizon like something out of a nightmare. Peeling paint, flickering neon sign, cars in various states of decay parked in front of numbered doors. Vincent pulled into a spot with a clear view of room 17. That's his, he said, nodding toward a door that looked like all the others. He's been in there for 6 hours. No movement, no visitors. How do you know he's actually inside? Thermal imaging. Luca's people confirmed it an hour ago. Vincent pulled out a gun from beneath his jacket, checked the chamber. I'm going in alone. You stay here. Engine running. If you see anyone who isn't me coming out, you drive. You don't look back. You don't wait. You just go. Maya nodded, her throat too tight to speak. Vincent leaned over, kissed her, soft and brief and tasting like goodbye, just in case. Then he was gone, moving across the parking lot with the liquid grace of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Maya watched him reach the door, watched him knock once, twice. No answer. Vincent tried the handle, locked. He stepped back, considered for a moment, then kicked the door just below the handle. The wood splintered, the door flew open, and gunfire erupted. Maya screamed, the sound swallowed by the explosion of noise, and saw Vincent dive sideways as bullets tore through the doorframe where he'd been standing. Marcus appeared in the doorway, the gun shaking in his hands, his face twisted with something between rage and madness. "You thought I'd just sit here?" he was shouting. "You thought I wouldn't figure out you'd come for me?" Vincent rolled behind a parked car, returned fire. The sound was deafening. Marcus ducked back inside, still shooting wildly, and Maya felt her whole body lock up with fear. This wasn't the plan. This wasn't supposed to happen. Vincent was pinned down. Marcus had the high ground, and any second now, someone was going to call the police, and this whole thing would spiral even further out of control. Maya's hand moved to the door handle before she could think. "Don't engage," Vincent had said. "Stay in the car. Run if something goes wrong." But her body wasn't listening to the plan anymore. It was listening to the part of her that had spent 4 years learning to read violence, to anticipate it, to survive it. Marcus reloaded. She could hear it, the click of the magazine, the rack of the slide. Vincent was trapped behind the car. If Marcus stepped out now, if he got a clear shot, Vincent would die. Maya grabbed the gun Vincent had left in the center console. A backup, probably, something he'd forgotten in the chaos. She opened the car door. The sound drew Marcus's attention. He spun toward her, eyes widening in recognition. "Maya," he breathed. "Baby, I knew you'd come. I knew you wouldn't let him kill me." She raised the gun, hands steady despite the fear screaming through her veins. "Put it down, Marcus." He laughed. "You won't shoot me. You don't have it in you. You're too soft, too weak. That's why you needed me in the first place." "I never needed you." Her voice was cold, clear. "I survived you. There's a difference." Marcus's smile faltered. "You don't mean that. Put the gun down." "Or what? You'll shoot me?" He took a step forward. "You can't even look at blood without flinching. You think you can pull that trigger? You think—" She fired. The bullet caught him in the shoulder, right side, clean through. Marcus staggered backward, his gun clattering to the ground, his face a mask of shock. "You shot me," he said, like he couldn't quite believe it. "You actually shot me." "I told you to put it down." Maya's hands were shaking now, the adrenaline catching up. "You didn't listen." Vincent appeared beside her, taking the gun gently from her hands. "It's okay. I've got it. You did good." Marcus slumped against the doorframe, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his fingers. "This is what he's turned you into, a killer, just like him." "No," Maya said quietly. "This is what you turned me into, someone who fights back." Vincent moved toward Marcus, his own gun raised, and Maya saw the calculation in his eyes, the cold math of finishing this, of making sure Marcus never came back. "Wait," she said. Vincent paused, looked at her. "Don't kill him." Maya stepped forward, stood between them. "Not like this. Not execution style in a motel parking lot. That makes us exactly what he said we are." "He tried to kill me," Vincent said. "He threatened you. He broke into our home with a gun. This isn't murder, Maya. It's self-defense." "It's revenge," she corrected, "and I don't want that on either of our souls." "Souls," Marcus laughed, the sound wet and broken. "You think you still have those, after everything you've done? Everything you've become?" Maya looked at him, really looked at him, and saw not the monster who'd haunted her dreams for 4 years, but a pathetic, broken man who'd never learned how to be anything but cruel. And she felt nothing. No fear, no anger, no hatred, just a vast, empty indifference. Call the police, she said to Vincent. Tell them there was a break-in, that Marcus Hale attacked us, that we defended ourselves. Let the system handle him. The system let him hurt you for 4 years, Vincent said, and killing him makes us the system. Maya met his gaze. Please, trust me, this is the right way. Vincent stared at her for a long moment. Then he lowered his gun. Okay, we do it your way. He pulled out his phone, made the call. Within minutes, sirens filled the air. The police arrived first, 2 units, lights flashing, then an ambulance, then more cops. The parking lot became a chaos of questions and statements and Vincent's lawyer appearing out of nowhere to handle the legal side. Maya sat in the back of the ambulance, a blanket around her shoulders despite not being hurt, and watched them load Marcus onto a gurney. He was still conscious, still coherent enough to spit curses at everyone who came near him. But when they wheeled him past Maya, he went quiet. Their eyes met one last time, and Maya realized with startling clarity that he had no power over her anymore. None. He was just a man, weak, pathetic, broken, and she was finally, completely, free. The ambulance doors closed. The siren wailed, and Marcus Hale disappeared into the night. Vincent appeared beside her, slipped an arm around her shoulders. You okay? Yeah. She leaned into him. I am. You shot him. I did. No hesitation. No. Maya looked up at him. Does that make me a bad person? Vincent's mouth curved into something almost like a smile. It makes you a survivor. They stayed there while the police finished their investigation, while Vincent's lawyer made sure the narrative was airtight, while the sun started to creep over the horizon. By the time they were cleared to leave, Maya was so exhausted she could barely stand. Vincent drove them back to the penthouse in silence, his hand finding hers on the console, holding tight. When they finally walked through the door, the same door Marcus had broken through less than 24 hours ago, Maya felt the weight of everything crash down at once. She made it to the couch before her legs gave out. Vincent sat beside her, pulled her close, and they stayed like that for a long time. It's really over, Maya said eventually. Isn't it? Yeah. Vincent kissed the top of her head. Marcus is going to prison for a long time. Attempted murder, breaking and entering, weapons charges. He won't get near you again. And Antonio? Still bound by the accord. He can't make a move without risking war with every family in the city. Vincent paused. We won, Maya. We actually won. She wanted to feel victorious, wanted to celebrate, wanted to believe that shooting Marcus had closed some chapter in her life and opened another, but all she felt was tired. So goddamn tired. What happens now? She asked. Now? Vincent shifted so he could see her face. Now we figure out how to live in the world we just fought for. And what does that look like? I don't know. His smile was small, uncertain, but real. But I think that's the point. We get to decide. Maya closed her eyes, felt the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear, and let herself believe just for a moment that maybe peace was actually possible. But see... 3 months later, Maya stood in front of a mirror in a dress that cost more than her first car and tried to recognize the woman staring back. She looked different, stronger. The softness that had defined her for so long had been replaced by something sharper, more defined. Her hair was pulled back severe and elegant. Her makeup was minimal but precise. And the dress, black, structured, absolutely unforgiving, made her look like she belonged in Vincent's world. Maybe she finally did. You ready? Luca appeared in the doorway, looking uncomfortable in a suit that was probably tailored to within an inch of its life. As I'll ever be, Maya said. They were hosting a dinner, all the families, a formal acknowledgement of the peace that had held for 3 months, a show of unity and strength, and Maya's official introduction as Vincent's partner, not girlfriend, not fiancé, partner, equal. The word still felt strange in her mouth. She followed Luca down to the main dining room, a space in the penthouse she'd barely used, now transformed into something elegant and intimidating. Long table, crystal glasses, flowers that probably cost more than most people's rent. The guests were already arriving. Vittoria Russo, elegant and sharp-eyed. Antonio Castellano, who nodded at Maya with something that might have been respect. Others she didn't know, but who looked at her with varying degrees of curiosity and calculation. And at the head of the table, wearing a suit that made him look like he owned the world, stood Vincent. He saw her enter and everything else seemed to fade. He crossed to her, offered his arm, and when she took it, she felt the room shift around them. "You look beautiful," he murmured. "I look terrifying," Maya corrected. "Same thing." They took their seats, Vincent at the head, Maya beside him in the position traditionally reserved for family. The message was clear. She wasn't a guest, wasn't a temporary fixture. She was permanent. Dinner progressed with the careful choreography of people who'd spent a lifetime pretending to be civilized. Conversation flowed around topics that mattered and didn't: business, weather, the state of the city. But underneath it all, Maya could feel them watching her, assessing, trying to figure out if she was a weakness or a strength. Halfway through the second course, Vittoria raised her glass. "A toast," she said, "to new alliances, and to the reminder that strength isn't always about who can hit the hardest. Sometimes it's about who can endure the longest." Glasses clinked. Wine flowed. And under the table, Vincent's hand found Maya's. After dinner, after the guests had filtered out with promises and veiled threats in equal measure, after Luca and the security team had swept the penthouse for the third time, Vincent and Maya stood alone on the balcony overlooking the city. The light stretched out forever, a constellation of lives being lived, battles being fought, futures being built. "What are you thinking?" Vincent asked. Maya leaned against the railing, felt the cool night air on her face. "That 3 months ago I was running through the rain with no idea where I'd end up. And now I'm here, standing next to you, part of your world, your life. And I'm still not sure if that's a good thing or a terrible one." Vincent moved beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. "It can be both. Is that what it is for you? Every single day?" He was quiet for a moment. "I wake up and wonder if I'm building something better, or just creating new ways to fail. If I'm honoring my father's legacy, or destroying it. If I'm protecting you, or just dragging you deeper into something you'll never escape." "And what conclusion do you come to?" "That it doesn't matter." Vincent turned to face her. "Because whatever this is, whatever we're building, I'd rather do it with you than alone." Maya's throat tightened. "Even if I'm still figuring out who I am? What I want? How to exist in this world without losing myself, especially then." He cupped her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "Because that's what makes you different from everyone else in that room. You're still asking those questions, still trying to be better, still refusing to accept that cruelty is the only option." "You do that too," Maya said. "I try. Most days I fail." Vincent's smile was sad. "But having you here makes me try harder." She kissed him then, soft and slow, and full of all the things she didn't have words for yet. When they broke apart, Vincent rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I don't know when it happened. Somewhere between the wedding and the boat and watching you shoot Marcus without blinking. But I do. I love you." Maya's breath caught. "You don't have to say that." "I know. I'm saying it anyway." She pulled back, studied his face in the dim light, and saw the truth there. Raw, unguarded, real. "I love you too," she whispered. "Even though you're difficult and dangerous and make me complicit in things I never thought I'd be part of. I love you." Vincent's smile was devastating. "We're a mess." "Yeah," Maya agreed, but we're our mess." They stayed on the balcony until the sky started to lighten, talking about everything and nothing, making plans they might never keep, building a future on foundation that was still settling. And when they finally went back inside, back to the bed they shared and the life they were creating, Maya felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the fragile kind that shattered at the first sign of trouble, but the stubborn kind that survived. The kind that said, "I've been through hell and I'm still here." The kind that said, "I choose this, I choose you, I choose us." And that impossible, complicated, beautiful choice was more powerful than anything Marcus had ever taken from her. 6 months after the night Marcus went to prison, Maya sat in a coffee shop that didn't belong to any family and stared at a newspaper article. The headline read, "Marcus Hale sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder." Beneath it was a photo. Marcus in an orange jumpsuit, looking smaller than she remembered. Older, broken. She felt nothing looking at it, just the same vast indifference that had taken root the night she'd shot him. Her phone buzzed, a text from Vincent. "Saw the news, you okay?" She typed back, "Yeah, I'm fine. Want me to come get you?" Maya looked out the window at the city moving around her, people going to work, living their lives, existing in a world that had once felt impossible to navigate. "No. I'll come home when I'm ready. Take your time. I'll be here." She pocketed her phone, finished her coffee, and sat in the quiet for a while longer. The coffee shop was ordinary, unremarkable, the kind of place where no one knew her name or her history or the violence she'd survived. And for the first time in her life, that felt like a gift. She'd spent so long being defined by other people. Marcus's girlfriend, Marcus's victim, Vincent's claimed woman, Vincent's partner. But sitting here now, anonymous and safe, she realized she was also just Maya. A woman who'd survived hell and was learning how to live on the other side. A woman who'd made choices, some good, some terrible, all necessary. A woman who was still figuring out who she wanted to be. And that was enough. She left the coffee shop and walked home through streets she'd once run through in terror. But now they were just streets, places, routes that led to a penthouse where someone was waiting for her. Not because she had to be there, but because she wanted to be. When she walked through the door, Vincent was in the kitchen making coffee. He looked up when he heard her, smiled. "Hey. Hey." She crossed to him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and breathed him in. "I'm home." "I can see that." His arms came around her, solid and warm. "You okay?" "Yeah." Maya pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. "I really am." Vincent studied her face, reading her the way he'd learned to over the past 6 months. Then he nodded. "Good." They moved to the living room, sat on the couch together, and Maya told him about the article. About seeing Marcus's face and feeling nothing. About sitting in the coffee shop and realizing she was finally, truly free. Vincent listened without interrupting, his hand moving through her hair in that absent way he had when he was thinking. "What do you want to do now?" he asked when she finished. "Now?" Maya considered. "I want to build something. Not just survive, not just react. Actually build." "Like what?" "I don't know yet." She turned to face him. "But something that helps people like me. People who are trying to escape situations they can't escape alone. A foundation, maybe, or a network. Something that gives them options beyond running and hoping." Vincent's expression shifted. Surprise, then something softer. "That's a good idea." "You think?" "I think," he said carefully, "that you could do a lot of good with resources and the right connections, and I think I might be able to help with that." "Without strings?" "Without strings." Vincent's mouth curved. "Well, maybe one string, which is that you let me be part of it, not as your boss, not as your protector, just as your partner." Maya felt her chest tighten in the best way. "I can live with that." They spent the rest of the day planning, researching organizations, talking to people Vincent knew who'd done similar work, sketching out what a foundation might look like. And for the first time since she'd crashed that wedding 6 months ago, Maya felt like she had a purpose beyond survival. She had a direction, a future, something worth building that wasn't defined by the men who'd tried to break her. Immersive. 1 year after the night Maya Chin ran through the rain and stumbled into a wedding that changed her life. She stood in front of a crowd of people and told her story. Not all of it. The details of Vincent's world stayed private, protected by the same careful boundaries that had allowed their relationship to survive. But the broad strokes, the abuse, the escape, the choice to stop running and start fighting back, those she shared. The crowd was small, intimate. Women who'd survived similar situations, men who were trying to understand, advocates and counselors, and people who believed that change was possible. Maya's foundation, called simply The Starting Line, had been operational for 6 months. It provided safe housing, legal support, job training, and counseling to people trying to leave abusive situations. It was funded by Vincent's legitimate businesses and overseen by a board that included Vittoria Russo and 3 other people who understood what it meant to survive impossible circumstances. And standing in the back of the room, arms crossed and expression carefully neutral, was Vincent. He didn't come to every event, didn't make himself visible in the Foundation's operations, but he was there when it mattered, when Maya needed him, when she doubted herself or the work or her ability to make a difference. She finished her speech to quiet applause, answered a few questions, and then the crowd dispersed into smaller conversations. Vincent appeared at her side, slipped an arm around her waist. "You did good," he said quietly. "You think?" "I know." He kissed her temple. "Your father would be proud." Maya's breath caught. Vincent rarely mentioned her family, the parents who died when she was young, the foster system that had failed her, the loneliness that had made Marcus's attention feel like salvation instead of the trap it was. "You think?" she asked. "I think anyone who knew you before all this started would be amazed at who you've become." Vincent paused. "I know I am." Maya turned in his arms, looked up at him, and saw the truth there. This wasn't the crime lord who'd claimed her in front of 50 witnesses. This wasn't the strategist who'd threatened a man's son to win a war. This was just Vincent, imperfect, trying, failing sometimes, but never giving up. Her partner. "I couldn't have done this without you," she said. "Yes, you could have." Vincent's voice was firm. "You would have found another way, another path. Because that's who you are, Maya. You survive. You adapt. You find a way forward. Maybe," she smiled, "but I'm glad I didn't have to do it alone." "Me too." They stayed at the event for another hour, talking to people, making connections, planting seeds for future work. And when they finally left, stepping out into a night that smelled like rain and new beginnings, Maya felt the weight of her past finally start to lift. Marcus was in prison. Antonio had honored the accord. The Foundation was growing. And she, Maya Chin, survivor, fighter, builder of futures, was finally learning how to be happy. Not perfect, not healed, but happy in the way that came from knowing you'd survived something terrible and come out the other side still capable of hope. Vincent drove them home through quiet streets, his hand finding hers on the console. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Maya looked out at the city. The lights, the shadows, the endless possibility of lives being lived in every window they passed. That a year ago I was running for my life with nowhere to go, and now I'm here, building something, helping people, loving someone who sees me for who I actually am. And how does that feel? She turned to him, saw the vulnerability in his eyes, the fear that maybe this had all been too much, too fast, too complicated to survive. "It feels like coming home," she said simply. Vincent's smile was worth every hard choice she'd made to get here. They pulled into the garage beneath the penthouse, rode the elevator up in comfortable silence, and walked into the space that had become theirs. The living room where Marcus had bled was long since cleaned, the furniture rearranged, the ghosts of violence exercised through time and choice, and the deliberate act of building something new. Maya kicked off her shoes, padded to the window, and looked out at the view she'd seen 100 times but never tired of. Vincent joined her, wrapped his arms around her from behind, and they stood there watching the city breathe. "I love you," Maya said quietly. "I love you too." Vincent's voice was rough with emotion. "More than I thought I could love anything. Even with all the complications. Especially with all the complications." She leaned back against him, felt the steady rise and fall of his chest, and let herself believe in the future they were building. It wouldn't be easy, she knew that. Vincent's world, their world now, would always carry the threat of violence, the weight of impossible choices, the price of survival, but they'd face it together. Not because they had to, but because they'd chosen to. And that choice, made freely, made fully, made with eyes wide open to all the risks and rewards, was more powerful than anything fear had ever taken from her. Outside, the rain started to fall, soft at first, then harder. But Maya didn't flinch. She just stood there, safe in the arms of a man who'd seen her at her lowest and loved her anyway, watching the storm wash the city clean. And when the thunder rolled across the sky, she smiled, because she wasn't running anymore. She was home. And nothing, not Marcus, not Antonio, not the ghosts of who she used to be, could take that away. The rain fell. The city breathed, and Maya Chin, survivor, fighter, lover, builder of futures, finally allowed herself to rest, not because the war was over, but because she'd learned that peace wasn't something you won. It was something you chose. Every single day. And she chose it now. She chose him. She chose herself. She chose the messy, complicated, beautiful life they were building together. And in that choice, in that single, powerful act of claiming her own future, she found something she'd been searching for since the night she climbed out Marcus's bathroom window. Freedom. Not from fear. Not from danger. Not from the hard choices that came with loving someone in Vincent's world. But freedom to be herself. Fully. Completely. Without apology. And that was worth everything.